My adoptive brother smirked and announced I wasn't invited to the family reunion because it was for real family only, while my parents sat in deafening, complicit silence. So, I went home, permanently closed the Bank of Elias, and called in over $300,000 in legally binding debts, triggering a financial avalanche that exposed a massive embezzlement scheme and left their picture-perfect family in absolute ruins. My name is Elias, and at 35 years old, I am the founder and CEO of a highly successful tech consulting firm. Despite my professional achievements and the wealth I've accumulated, for the vast majority of my life, I was nothing more than the tolerated outsider in my own home. I was 8 years old when the Sterling family adopted me. A drunk driver had taken both of my birth parents in a horrific intersection collision, leaving me with nothing but a faded blue duffel bag containing a few changes of clothes, a stuffed bear missing one eye, and a profound, aching emptiness. I still vividly remember standing in the sterile, fluorescent-lit office of the social worker, clutching that bag as if it were a life preserver. Thomas and Martha Sterling walked in, looking like a television commercial for the perfect suburban family. They wore pristine, expensive clothing, smelled of designer cologne and fresh laundry, and offered me warm, practiced smiles that made me feel safe for the first time in months. They already had a biological son, Connor, who was 10 at the time, and they would later have a surprise biological daughter, Chloe, when I was 13. Those very early years were, on the surface, relatively good. Martha made absolutely certain that I had new clothes that fit me perfectly, enrolled me in the exact same prestigious private elementary school as Connor, and unfailingly baked my favorite double chocolate chip cookies from scratch on my birthday. Thomas would enthusiastically ruffle my hair and call me champ whenever I brought home a report card filled with straight A's. I felt welcomed, and I desperately wanted to be a true Sterling, even if there was always this lingering, unspoken understanding hovering in the air that I wasn't truly theirs. The subtle but agonizing differences became painfully apparent as Connor and I entered our middle school years. Thomas would enthusiastically wake Connor up at 5:00 a.m. on Saturday mornings to take him fly fishing at the lake, just the two of them. It was a sacred bonding ritual. When I gathered the courage to ask if I could come along just once, Thomas awkwardly patted my shoulder, avoiding eye contact, and said, "This is our special thing, Elias. Just for the Sterling men. Maybe we can find something special for us to do, too, down the line." But that something special never materialized. Not once. Instead, I threw myself entirely into academics, seeking validation through achievement. While Connor struggled heavily with basic algebra and barely scraped by in history, I excelled in advanced mathematics, physics, and computer science. Martha would beam with a kind of polite, distant pride at my parent-teacher conferences, but Thomas would simply nod dismissively, check his watch, and immediately pivot the conversation to ask the teachers about Connor's progress on the varsity soccer team. Chloe, initially, absolutely adored me. As a little girl, she was my shadow, following me around the house asking a million endless questions about everything from astronomy to how the internet worked. I was the one who patiently taught her how to ride a bike when she was 7, spending 4 exhausting hours running alongside her down our tree-lined suburban street, scraping my knees, until she finally found her balance and pedaled away laughing. But as she entered her teenage years, the family dynamic shifted its gravity. She began to gravitate exclusively toward Connor. I'd constantly hear them laughing uproariously behind closed doors, only for the conversation to stop abruptly, followed by awkward silence, the moment I walked past their rooms. High school completely solidified the deep, unbridgeable divisions in our family. Thomas had attended Oak Ridge Academy, a ridiculously expensive preparatory school, and made it abundantly clear that Connor would follow in his footsteps to carry on the legacy. I was enrolled there as well, but it was frequently and loudly made clear that my tuition was a massive financial burden, something I should be endlessly grateful for. I will never forget the night I was getting a glass of water and heard Thomas bitterly complaining to Martha in the kitchen. "We're spending as much money on Elias as we are on our actual son. It's ridiculous. He doesn't even have the family name to uphold in the Alumni Association." Those words cut me so deeply I felt physically sick, but I channeled that profound hurt into relentless determination. I graduated as the valedictorian of my class, delivering a speech to a standing ovation, while Connor barely maintained a C- average and was suspended twice for cheating. I earned a partial academic scholarship to a highly respected state university, but it wasn't nearly enough to cover all my living expenses, textbooks, and lab fees. While Connor was sent off to an outrageously expensive private university with every single cost covered including a brand new luxury SUV as a going-away present, I worked 3 grueling part-time jobs. I was a barista at 5:00 a.m., a campus IT help desk worker during the day, and an overnight security guard where I would write my coding assignments on a battered laptop. My computer science degree eventually opened massive doors. I started my career at a mid-sized tech startup, and by the time Connor finally managed to graduate with a generic business degree which Thomas had essentially purchased through massive donations to the university's athletic department, I had already been promoted to senior lead developer. The family dynamics continued to evolve in the most painfully predictable ways. Thomas would occasionally call me, acting overly friendly, just to fish for free high-level IT consulting advice when his manufacturing business needed to update its archaic inventory systems. Yet, he never fully acknowledged my professional expertise in public. At company holiday parties, he would proudly introduce Connor to his wealthy business associates as my son, the future CEO of Sterling Manufacturing, while I was casually dismissed as Elias, who does some computer stuff for us. Martha tried, in her quiet, passive-aggressive way, to balance things out. She would call me on Sundays to check in, send small care packages of mixed nuts to my cramped apartment, and make sure to briefly mention my promotions at family gatherings. But she never, ever directly confronted Thomas's blatant favoritism. Over time, her half-hearted efforts dwindled, as if she too had fully accepted the unspoken hierarchy. Connor and Chloe were the real children, and I was the charity case who overstayed his welcome. By my late 20s, I had taken a massive risk and founded my own tech consulting firm, Sterling Tech Solutions. I kept the family name, still pathetically seeking some form of connection and validation. The business grew exponentially, securing massive digital transformation contracts with several Fortune 500 companies. I eventually bought a stunning penthouse apartment in the Summit Ridge Towers, invested heavily in diverse portfolios, and built a massive safety net. Meanwhile, Connor bounced aimlessly between fake executive jobs at Thomas's company, never living up to expectations, but always receiving second, third, and fifth chances, along with massive salary bumps he never earned. Chloe had married Julian, the incredibly arrogant heir to a regional banking fortune. Julian made zero effort to hide his absolute disdain for my adopted status, frequently making vile, passive-aggressive comments about good breeding, bloodlines, and quality stock while sipping my expensive scotch. Chloe, desperate to secure her position in Julian's elite social circle, never defended me and often joined in with subtle jabs about the real Sterling. The pivotal turning point in my career happened 5 years ago when I landed a multinational logistics corporation as a client. I worked 8-0-hour weeks for 9 straight months, sleeping on an uncomfortable leather couch in my office more often than in my own bed. When we delivered the custom software architecture ahead of schedule and millions under budget, they signed an exclusive multi-year contract that instantly quadrupled my company's revenue. Success poured in like a flood. Within 3 years, my firm was generating annual revenues in the high 8 figures. Despite my wealth and success, a profound, suffocating loneliness had settled into my bones. I continued showing up for the mandatory Sunday family dinners once a month. I sent incredibly thoughtful, expensive birthday and Christmas gifts. I tried so desperately to be the son they never fully accepted, blindly hoping my persistence and generosity would finally buy me a genuine family connection. Around this time, Thomas's manufacturing business began facing catastrophic financial challenges. The industry was automating rapidly, and Thomas stubbornly refused to adapt, losing massive contracts to overseas competitors. What I didn't know then was that his traditional way of doing business involved secretly taking out second and third mortgages on their sprawling family estate and quietly liquidating Martha's retirement accounts. His immense pride prevented him from admitting how dire the situation was until a desperate Tuesday night when he practically begged me for a temporary, short-term business bridge loan of $75,000 to make payroll. I transferred the money within the hour, but out of strict professional habit, I had my corporate lawyers draft up proper, legally binding loan documents with a set repayment schedule and interest rates. Thomas signed them, laughing it off as a formality, and I never genuinely expected to see a dime of it back. Connor, meanwhile, had launched several disastrous businesses of his own. First, a high-end vape shop that was shut down for selling to minors. Then, a luxury mobile pet grooming service that collapsed because he refused to actually hire groomers. Finally, an artisan craft brewery that produced undrinkable, contaminated swill. After each humiliating collapse, he would run back to a cushy vice president title at Thomas's struggling company. I had personally loaned Connor $50,000 across those 3 ventures to help him get on his feet, all documented and signed for, all completely unpaid. Then came the medical bills. Martha developed a severe, aggressive autoimmune disorder that required highly specialized, experimental infusion treatments not covered by their rapidly degrading insurance policy. When I overheard Thomas yelling at Martha in the kitchen that they would have to cut her treatments in half because they were broke, I anonymously contacted her specialist. For 3 straight years, I quietly paid $2,000 every single month directly to the clinic. $72,000 in total. I never breathed a word of it to anyone, allowing Thomas to take the credit for finding the money. Add to that the $30,000 I paid directly to the vendors for Chloe's lavish wedding when Thomas's checks started bouncing, and the $85,000 I paid to cover half the mortgage of the family's mountain cabin. A cabin I was only allowed to use 1 weekend a year. This all led up to the fateful dinner that shattered my illusion forever. It was the 31st anniversary of the day I was adopted. I arrived at the colonial family home exactly at 6:00 p.m., holding a $200 bottle of Martha's favorite Pinot Noir. The house smelled of her signature Sunday pot roast. In the living room, Connor was sprawling on the sofa, nursing a craft beer. Chloe and Julian sat rigidly on the love seat, looking like they were posing for a magazine cover. Martha greeted me with a tired hug, taking the wine with a generic "you shouldn't have." The dinner conversation was the usual agonizingly choreographed small talk. Thomas complained about taxes. Julian made purposely convoluted stock market references to make me feel stupid. Chloe bragged about her country club charity gala. During a lull in the conversation, feeling a rare moment of optimism, I brought up the upcoming annual family reunion at the mountain cabin. "I've blocked off the entire first week of August," I said, smiling genuinely. "I thought I might head up to the cabin a few days early to fix the dock and get some fishing in." "Connor, I'm definitely breaking your base record this year." The silence that instantly swallowed the dining room was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Connor slowly looked over at Thomas, who suddenly became intensely fascinated by the carrots on his plate. Then, Connor let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed off the walls. "You're not invited," Connor stated, his voice dripping with venomous amusement. "It's for real family only this time." The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I froze, my fork hovering in the air. I looked desperately around the table, waiting for Thomas to reprimand him, waiting for Martha to gasp, waiting for Chloe to say it was a bad joke. Nothing. Thomas cleared his throat and took a sip of water. Martha stared down at her lap, her knuckles white. Chloe exchanged a knowing, smug smirk with Julian. "I don't understand," I managed to say, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts to control it. "I've attended every single family reunion for the past 30 years. I pay half the mortgage on the cabin we're hosting it at." "Well, things change, Elias," Connor sneered, leaning back in his chair, visibly emboldened by the parents' silence. "Aunt Barbara is helping organize it this year, and we all agreed we want to keep it intimate. Blood relatives, we want to celebrate the actual Sterling lineage. It's really just a space limitation issue." "Elias," Thomas finally mumbled, refusing to make eye contact with me. "The cabin is only so big." "Don't sugarcoat it, Dad," Chloe chimed in, her tone dripping with elitist entitlement. "We've been discussing this for 2 months. The reunion is about our heritage. It should just be for actual Sterlings. It's nothing personal." "Blood is thicker than water, old boy," Julian added with a sagely nod, swirling his wine glass. "No offense intended, but you understand." The sheer, calculated cruelty of the ambush paralyzed me. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. They had held family meetings about this. They had deliberately planned this for months, and they specifically chose to deliver the news as a united front at the dinner table to humiliate me, rather than having the decency to pull me aside privately. I felt something deep inside my chest snap, a literal, physical sensation of a cord breaking. 27 years of desperately seeking their approval, of buying their love, of tolerating their disrespect, vanished in a single heartbeat. I calmly placed my linen napkin beside my untouched plate. I stood up, my face completely devoid of emotion. "I see," I said, my voice eerily calm and steady. "Thank you for clarifying my position in this family. Martha, the pot roast smells lovely. But I just remembered I have a very early meeting tomorrow. Enjoy your evening." "Elias, wait," Martha said weakly, her voice trembling slightly. "Don't worry about it, Mom. Let him throw his little tantrum," Connor scoffed, cutting a piece of meat. I turned around, walked to the coat closet, grabbed my jacket, and walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently, with finality. The drive back to my penthouse was a blur of neon city lights and blinding headlight. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. When I finally reached the absolute silence of my apartment, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city of millions, the pain crystallized into something incredibly cold, hard, and unforgiving. Update 1. I didn't sleep a single minute that night. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the encrypted financial spreadsheet where I meticulously tracked all my personal expenditures and loans. I created it years ago for tax purposes, but looking at it now made me physically nauseous. I tallied up every single dollar I had injected into the Sterling family over the past decade. Thomas's business loan, $75,000. Martha's secret medical treatments, $72,000. Connor's 3 failed businesses, $50,000. Chloe's wedding vendors, $30,000. The mountain cabin mortgage, $85,000. The grand total stared back at me in bold green font. $312,000. Over $250,000. I had funded their lavish, pretentious lifestyle while they sat in a circle and decided I wasn't good enough to eat hot dogs with them at a lake. As if the universe had a sick sense of humor, at 9 a.m. the very next morning, my phone buzzed with an automated banking alert. It was a digital transfer request from Thomas Sterling for $3,500. The attached note read, "Hey Elias, need to cover the catering deposit for the family reunion. Cash flow is a bit tight this week. We'll pay you back next month. Thanks, Dad." The sheer, unadulterated audacity took my breath away. They explicitly uninvited me from the event for not being blood, and less than 15 hours later, they expected me to pay for the food they would eat while celebrating my exclusion. I took a screenshot of the request. I hit the bright red DENI button. I texted the screenshot to Thomas, Connor, Chloe, and Martha in a group chat with a single sentence. "Payment denied. Must be that family-only policy." Then, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and drove to my corporate lawyer's office. When I finally checked my phone that evening, I had 24 missed calls and a barrage of texts. "Thomas. Elias. This is incredibly petty. We need that deposit today or we lose the caterer. Stop acting like a child and authorize the transfer. Connor. You vindictive piece of trash. After everything this family did for you, taking you out of the gutter, you're going to hold money over our heads? Fix this now." Chloe. I am so disappointed in you. You know Dad's stressed. You're ruining the reunion for everyone just because your feelings got hurt. I didn't reply. I spent the next 2 days working with my legal team, pulling every signed contract, every promissory note, every bank transfer receipt, and the deed to the mountain cabin. On the third night, at 8:15 p.m., my building's private elevator chimed. Hector, the downstairs doorman, had let them up because they were on my pre-approved guest list. My front door was pounded on so hard I thought the wood would splinter. I opened it to find Thomas, Connor, and Julian standing in the hallway. Thomas's face was purple with rage. Connor looked erratic, pacing back and forth, and Julian stood with his arms crossed, trying to look intimidating. "We are not doing this over text messages," Thomas bellowed, pushing past me into my living room without an invitation. "You are going to authorize that transfer, and you are going to stop this childish silent treatment. Get out of my apartment," I said quietly, leaving the front door wide open. "You don't get to cut us off." Connor screamed, veins bulging in his neck. "We are your family. You owe us." "Am I family, Connor?" I asked, walking slowly toward him. "Because 3 nights ago, you looked me dead in the eye and said I wasn't real family. You said I was just an outsider. You can't have it both ways. You can't treat me like a stray dog you regret adopting, and then expect me to act like your personal ATM." Julian stepped forward, putting on his best fake lawyer voice. "Listen to me very carefully, Elias. I've had my family's legal team look at those little IOUs you made Thomas and Connor sign. They are completely unenforceable. If you try to collect, we will bury you in litigation. You will pay more in legal fees than the loans are worth. Be a good boy, pay the reunion deposit, and apologize to your father." I actually laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound that seemed to unnerve all 3 of them. "Julian, your family's lawyers must be absolute morons. Every single loan document was drafted by Levinson and Vance, the top corporate litigation firm in the state. They are ironclad. Not only are they enforceable, but they contain acceleration clauses. If a payment is missed, which Thomas and Connor have missed for over a year, the entire principal balance becomes due immediately." Thomas's arrogant facade instantly cracked. The color drained from his face. "Elias. Please. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The manufacturing plant is failing. We're drowning. If you call in those loans, I'll lose the company. We'll lose the house. We need your money." "So that's the truth," I said, looking at the pathetic man who raised me. "You don't want me in your family. You never did. You just desperately need my bank account to fund the illusion that you're successful. Well, the bank of Elias is permanently closed." Connor lunged at me, raising his fist, but Julian grabbed his arm, suddenly realizing the severity of the situation. "Elias, after everything we've done for you," Thomas started, tears actually forming in his eyes. "You gave me a roof, Thomas. And I paid for it 10 times over," I interrupted. "You have exactly 30 days to repay the $125,000 in defaulted business loans. Furthermore, I am forcing a partition sale of the mountain cabin to recover my $85,000 equity. Now get the hell out of my home before I have Hector drag you out by your hair." They left in stunned, terrifying silence. The moment the door clicked shut, I felt a massive, crushing weight lift off my chest. I poured myself a glass of scotch and drafted a mass email. I included every single aunt, uncle, cousin, and family friend on the Sterling side. I attached PDF copies of every loan agreement, every bank transfer, every receipt for Chloe's wedding, and the mortgage payments for the cabin. The body of the email was simple. "Last week, I was explicitly informed by Connor, Thomas, and Chloe that I am not real family and am permanently excluded from family gatherings. I am simply aligning my financial support with my new status as an outsider. Attached is the $312,000 I have contributed to the Sterling family over the last decade. Please direct all future financial requests to the real Sterlings. I hit send, and the fallout was utterly biblical. Update 2. It has been 6 months since I sent that nuclear email, and the sheer amount of chaos that unfolded is something out of a movie. First, the immediate aftermath of the email. My phone exploded with calls from extended family members who were absolutely horrified. Aunt Barbara called me in tears, revealing that Thomas had told everyone I voluntarily chose not to come to the reunion because I thought I was too rich and too busy for them. When the extended family saw the receipts, especially the part where I paid for Chloe's wedding while Thomas took the credit in his father of the bride speech, they turned on Thomas instantly. The family reunion was completely cancelled. But the real twist happened when I officially filed the lawsuit to collect the $125,000 in defaulted loans. Because Thomas's company was heavily leveraged, my lawsuit triggered a massive default with his primary commercial lenders. Thomas was forced to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Because I was a major secured creditor, my legal team gained full access to the company's financial records during the discovery phase. I hired a forensic accountant just to be petty, and what they found blew the entire family wide open. Connor's 3 failed businesses weren't just the result of incompetence. He had been actively embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from Thomas's manufacturing company for years to pay off massive underground sports gambling debts. And the most sickening part? Thomas knew about it. Thomas had been using the $75,000 bridge loan I gave him to quietly cover up Connor's embezzlement so the IRS and their business partners wouldn't find out. They literally stole my money to keep their golden biological son out of federal prison. When this information became public in the bankruptcy filings, the dominoes fell fast. Thomas's business partners sued him for fraud. The company was completely liquidated. The bank foreclosed on the Colonial family home, and Connor is currently under investigation by the state authorities for wire fraud. As for Chloe and Julian, that was the second massive twist. When Julian threatened me with his family's legal team, he was bluffing entirely. It turned out Julian's family had lost almost their entire banking fortune during the 2008 financial crisis. They were essentially broke, living entirely on credit and keeping up appearances. Julian only married Chloe because he thought the Sterling manufacturing money and by extension, my tech money would fund his lavish lifestyle. When Thomas went bankrupt and I cut them off, Julian filed for divorce 3 weeks later, leaving Chloe with massive credit card debt and nowhere to live. The final nail in the coffin came from Martha. A month ago, she begged me to meet her for coffee. I went, mostly out of morbid curiosity. She looked aged, exhausted, and broken. She cried hysterically in the middle of the Starbucks, apologizing profusely, telling me she loved me, and saying she should have protected me from Thomas and Connor. I actually felt a twinge of guilt and considered reinstating the payment for her medical treatment. But then, as we were leaving, she slid a manila envelope across the table. "Elias. Sweetie," she whispered, her eyes pleading. "Connor is facing serious jail time. His defense attorney needs a $50,000 retainer. You have so much money. Please, save your brother. He's family." The illusion shattered completely. She didn't want to apologize. She was just playing the loving mother card to extract money for her real son. I stood up, looked at her with absolute disgust, and said, "Connor is not my real family. Remember?" I walked out, leaving her sobbing at the table with the envelope. Today, Thomas and Martha are renting a tiny 2-bedroom apartment on the bad side of town. Chloe moved back in with them and works as a receptionist at a dental office. Connor is awaiting trial. As for me, I've never been happier. I sold my half of the mountain cabin, took the money, and bought a beautiful lake house 2 states over. I hosted my own gathering last weekend. I invited Aunt Barbara, a few cousins who supported me, my best friends, and my incredible new girlfriend. We drank wine, we laughed until our ribs hurt, and we watched the sunset over the water. I finally have a real family, and it turns out, it has absolutely nothing to do with blood. Neglected by my family, I left. When my brother was arrested, they begged for help. I demanded an apology, then refused. Do you ever feel like you're just there? Like you exist in a space but no one sees you? That is how it has always been in my family. I wasn't the perfect child. I was not the troublemaker. Just the one in the middle. The one who performed what was required but never quite enough. It started little. Small things. My parents forgot to save me a plate for dinner. My brother took my items without asking, knowing that no one would care if I protested. They never explicitly stated that I wasn't wanted, at least not at first, but it was always there. In the way people spoke around me, my existence seemed like an afterthought. I attempted to brush it off. Families were not perfect, correct? Perhaps I was simply being sensitive. Maybe if I worked more and performed better, they'd finally see me as someone worth keeping. So I worked hard. I made certain that my grades were solid. I helped around the house, I remained out of trouble. However, it never seemed to matter. My brother? He could do whatever he wanted, Talk back, skip chores, fail a class, it made no difference. My parents would make excuses for him. He's only a kid. He's going through a difficult moment, you should be more supportive of him. Every time I brought out the disparity in how we were treated, I became the problem. It was difficult. The resentment eventually bubbled over. But it's not from me. From them. It was Saturday night. I'd just come home from work. Nothing extraordinary, simply a part-time job at a neighborhood grocery store. My parents never gave me much money, so I worked on weekends to save some. My brother, on the other hand, did not need to lift a finger. He received everything he wanted. I entered the house, tired. The first thing I saw was him sitting on the couch, controller in hand, deeply immersed in his game. A half-eaten dish of food rested on the table. And my backpack is on the floor. Open. My notebooks and papers were spilled on the carpeting. What the hell, dude? I sighed and bent down to gather up my belongings. Oh yeah, he mumbled, staring at the television. We needed paper. I took some. As I flipped through my notebook, my stomach sank. My notes, which I had spent hours on, were gone. Torn out. I clenched my jaw. Are you serious? He finally looked at me and said, relax. It's simply some pointless notes. It's not like you do anything important. That landed harder than it should have. Perhaps because deep down, I knew that was how he saw me. How everyone saw me. Where are they? I inquired, my voice tight. He scoffed. Dunno. Probably in the trash. I'm not sure what happened at that moment, but something inside me snapped. Not in a violent, screaming way, but in a cold, calm knowledge. I was not one of them. Not really. I took a deep breath and forced myself to remain calm. You're unbelievable, I mumbled as I walked by him to the kitchen. That's when my folks entered. And that's when things started to go wrong. My mother and father entered, laughing at something, an inside joke between them. Something I never participated in, but as they noticed me standing there, their demeanor changed. What's with this attitude? My father asked, his eyes narrowing. I sighed sharply while still holding my destroyed notebook. Ask him, I said, nodding to my brother. He ripped out my notes. I just threw them away like they were nothing. My mother scarcely glanced at him. It's just paper, she remarked with a dismissive palm. I stared between them, expecting something. Even anything as simple as that wasn't cool or don't do that again. But nothing. Instead, my brother smirked. Yeah, it's just paper, he repeated, as if he knew he had already won. I felt my fingers tightening around the notebook. Right. Of course. I turned to head upstairs, but my father's voice stopped me. You know, this attitude is exactly why no one wants to be around you. I froze. What? I inquired, turning slowly. Dumb, my mother moaned, as if she had grown tired of me. You overreact to everything. Constantly playing the victim. Always creating problems. Is this causing problems? I gave out a sour laugh. For what? Expecting basic respect? Because I don't want my belongings trashed? My brother snorted. God, you're so dramatic. I shake my head. You behave as if I'm the problem, but you don't even notice what's occurring. You just let him do what he wants. Dad folded his arms. Because he's not the one constantly whining. That hit hard. But not as difficult as what happened later. My brother lay back on the couch, arms extended behind his head, smirking. No one wants you here, man. I felt my stomach drop. But my parents' reaction broke something in me. They nodded. They truly nodded. My mom didn't say anything. My father didn't argue. They just stood there silently. As if they had already accepted that fact. I did not yell. I did not beg them to take it back. I just breathed. And something inside of me went cold. Okay, I replied simply. And I went upstairs to pack my stuff. And I left. But this was not the end. Not even close. Because the next morning, my phone was filled with 12 missed calls. And that's when I realized that leaving was the best decision I'd ever made. I did not answer any of the calls. Not at first. I simply gazed at my phone, watching as the notifications piled up. My brother. My dad. Even my mother. For a family that didn't want me, they were frantic to contact me now. I let it ring. I was not in a haste. After leaving last night, I didn't have a plan. I threw my belongings in a duffel bag and walked out, feeling numb. I crashed at a friend's place, someone who genuinely cared about me. He didn't ask any questions. I didn't push. He simply tossed me a blanket and added, "You can stay as long as you need." It was more kindness than my own family had shown me in many years. They wanted something now. And I suspected it wasn't because they missed me. By the time the calls ceased, a few texts began to arrive. The first ones were exactly what I imagined. Mom. You are acting immature. Come back. Dad. Enough with this crap. You should quit acting like a child. I scoffed. Yes, I actually left. They were definitely not apologetic. Then a new message arrived. One event transformed everything. Mom. Come home now. We have an issue. I glanced at the screen, my pulse quickening. Is there a problem? I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I finally texted back. Only 2 words. Me. What happened? Her reply came almost immediately. Mom. Your brother messed up. Bad. And just like that, I knew. They did not miss me. They did not want me back. They needed me. And that gave me an idea. I lay back on the couch and stared at my phone. So they needed me. Interesting. I was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, I allowed them to sweat a little. If my brother had truly messed up, whatever happened was significant enough that my parents, who had never taken my side, were now reaching out. After around 10 minutes of silence, more texts started arriving. Dad. We don't have time for your attitude, just come home. Mom. Please. This is serious, seriously. That almost made me laugh. When my troubles became serious, they advised me to get over them. But now that my brother was in peril, it became crucial. I took my time penning the next response. Me. It's not my problem. A minute has passed. Then another. Then my father called. I let it ring, declined. A second later, a text appeared. Dad. You are being selfish. I breathed sharply through my nose. Selfish? That was impressive coming from him. Then my mother texted again. Mom. Your brother has been arrested. I blinked. Okay, now I am interested. I took my friend's car keys from the countertop. I need a ride. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? Thought you were done with them. I smirked. Oh, I am. But I need to see this for myself. 15 minutes later I pulled up in front of my home. My father was pacing on the porch, phone in hand, and appeared more anxious than I'd ever seen him. My mother sat on the steps, head in her hands. For once, no one laughed, no disparaging remarks, just pure panic. Silence. I took my time walking up. So, I casually inquired. Who wants to tell me what happened? My father turned, his gaze steely. Where the hell have you been? I raised an eyebrow. Not here, like you wanted? He clenched his teeth, but before he could respond, my mother spoke. It's your brother, she explained, her voice cracking. He stole something? From the wrong people? I frowned. The wrong people? Dad ran his fingers over his face. Some guys at that arcade he hangs out at. We don't know the details, but they called the cops. He's in holding right now. I nearly laughed. Of course, my brother had spent years treating me like garbage, believing he was untouchable. And now, the actual world had struck him like a truck. I crossed my arms. And what do you want me to do about it? Mom shot me a frantic look. We need money. For a lawyer. Bail. Something. We need your help. I stared at her for a long time. Then I finally grinned. They needed me. But I didn't need them. After years of shoving me aside and treating me like I was nothing, they now looked at me as if I were their only hope. And in a way, I was. I tucked my hands in my pockets and tilted my head slightly. So let me get this straight, I muttered. You told me I was unwanted. You let my brother treat me like garbage. You didn't care when I walked out. But now that he's in trouble, you suddenly remember I exist? My father's jaw stiffened. This isn't about that. This is about family. I laughed. A brief piercing noise. Oh, now we're family? That's funny. Because last night, I was a burden. Mom's eyes were begging. Please. We can talk about all of that later. Right now, we need to get him out before this gets worse. I let out a slow breath, pretending to think about it. And how much money are we talking about? Dad exhaled. Bail is set at $10,000. We can pay a portion, but we need you to cover the rest. I whistled. 10 grand, huh? Sounds serious. My mother perked up somewhat. So, you'll do it? I smirked. Oh, absolutely not. Their faces sank so quickly that I nearly felt awful. Almost. Excuse me? My father snapped. I shrugged. Not my problem. Mom's voice crackled. But, he's your brother. I shake my head. He's your son. I corrected with a firm voice. And you made it very clear that I was never part of this family. Dad stepped forward, wrath in his eyes. You think you're proving a point? You think this is funny? I met his stare without flinching. No. I smirked. I think it's fair. Mom grabbed my arm, her words urgent. We'll pay you back, I took a step backward. You think I trust you? The people who threw me away without a second thought? Her lips opened and closed, but she said nothing. I shake my head. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to figure this out without me, just like you always wanted. And I'm going to walk away, just like you told me to. I turned on my heels and returned to my friend's car. My father cried after me, Don't you dare walk away from us. I looked over my shoulder. You already did it first. Then I got in my car and drove away, leaving them in the mess they had created. I drove away. My fists gripped around the steering wheel. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like I finally had the last laugh. But, instead? I felt hollow. Not because I regretted my decision, they deserved it, but because after all, even when they begged for my assistance, I knew they still didn't consider me family. They simply saw me as a solution. A wallet. A safety net. And now, that net was gone. That night, I sat in my room, reading through my phone and eating a beautiful, fatty burger from my favorite takeout restaurant. It was serene. Quiet. I hadn't experienced a night like this in years living under that roof. I considered turning my phone on mute, but I couldn't resist checking my alerts. Surprise, surprise, my family had not given up. Mom sent 3 SMS in a row. Mom. Let's work something out. Please let's speak. Mother. Your brother is still in jail. We're having trouble getting the money together. Mom. Please, I understand we were tough previously, but, we're family. I almost choked on my soda. Are we now a family? Did they finally care? That was lavish. I was pondering whether to answer when another text arrived, this time from my father. Dad. See, we can repay you. You simply need to trust us. That one had me laughing out loud. Trust them. The same people who for years treated me as if I were an unwanted guest in my own home? Are these the same people who advised me to leave without hesitation? Yeah. Right. Just as I was about to put my phone down, another message arrived. Brother. Come on, man. Are you really going to let me rot here? Oh, this was really amazing. After everything he's put me through, all the times he's shoved me around, mocked me, and labeled me useless, what now? Now he sought my assistance. I decided to have some fun. Me. You said no one wanted me around. I'm simply respecting your requests. Delivered, read. No response. I smiled at myself, extended my arms behind my head, and ate another piece of my burger. Life was good. The following morning, I awoke to a rush of messages. Groggy, I massaged my eyes, unlocked my phone, and began scrolling through them. Apparently, things were getting tough for the family at home. Dad. We had to sell both the TV and my golf clubs. Your mother is furious at me. I hope you're happy. Dad. Please. We don't know what to do now. And then, the best one yet. Brother. I swear to God, when I leave, you better hope I don't find you. That was hilarious. Was the same guy who needed my help now threatening me? I chose to respond. Me. That is some strong language for someone who requires my assistance. Try again. An hour passed before my mother swallowed her pride and sent another message. Mom. Please, we are definitely struggling. I let her sit in her desperation for a few minutes before responding. Me. I'll bail him out. On one condition. She did not hesitate. Mom. Anything? I smirked. I want a public apology. In the family group chat. A long one. I want you all to admit every horrible thing you've said to me, and I want you to thank me for helping. I knew that would hurt my father's pride. But if they needed my help so desperately, they'd have to beg for it. It did take them a bit. But eventually, a new message appeared in the family group chat. Dad. We need to discuss how we've treated you. We've made mistakes, and we now see how deeply we've wounded him. We profoundly regret our comments and behavior. He is an essential member of our family, and we appreciate his generosity in assisting us during this tough time. It was stiff, it was forced, And it was quite humiliating for them. Perfect. I gave them a simple thumbs up emoji and proceeded about my day. Did I really bail my brother out? Haha. Absolutely not. But at least I received the apologies I had always deserved. Next week, my brother called me. "Man, I can't believe you did this to me," he said over the phone, his voice heavy with rage. "I thought you were better than this." I couldn't help laughing. It was not a malicious chuckle. It's more like the giggle you get when the universe gives you precisely what you deserve. "Better than what?" I inquired, my voice light and even humorous. "I'm just giving you what you wanted. You told me I wasn't wanted, remember? So now you get to stay exactly where you belong." I could hear him smashing something into the jail bars in the distance. "You can't do this? You're really just leaving me here?" I paused for a moment before responding. "You know, I thought I might bail you out. I really did. But you, and the rest of the family, you've made it pretty clear that I don't matter." I paused to allow the words to sink in. So now? I get to laugh. I get to enjoy my life, knowing that I'm out here living it on my terms while you're stuck. Enjoy your stay. He did not say anything for a while. I could almost see him furious on the other end. But I didn't care. After years of being regarded as an afterthought, like an unseen shadow in the backdrop, this was my moment. When I hung up the phone, a sense of relief washed over me. I wasn't angry anymore. In fact, I couldn't feel the resentment I used to harbor for them. Everything had melted away. Just like that. My brother remained in jail. They did everything to get him out, but the charges were so serious that they couldn't help him. They begged and pleaded, but the reality was, they needed me far more than I needed them. As for me, I walked away. Hold your head high. I knew I'd finally returned my power. I didn't have to move a finger to make their lives miserable. They had already done it for me. All I had to do was relax, enjoy my quiet, and know that they would never see me the same way again. And whenever I looked at my phone, with its continual reminders of how desperate they were, I smiled. Because in the end, it wasn't only about the money, it was about the sweet, fulfilling taste of vengeance. For the first time in years, I was finally living for myself. Honestly, this story is quite satisfying. The protagonist was mistreated by his family, but the way he turned the tables and refused to help his brother was great. It's like the best revenge. And he didn't even need to do anything drastic, just let them face the consequences. What are your thoughts? Was that the correct decision, or did he go too far? Would you have helped? Or is this retribution well deserved? Let me know your thoughts. I was ignored by my family, overshadowed by my mom's favoritism. No matter how hard I tried, I was always blamed for my sister's mistakes. I was never a favorite. That was my sister, the golden child. The person who could do no wrong, no matter how vicious she was or how much she got away with. My mother adored her. And me? I was just there. An afterthought. A shadow in my own house. It's always been this way. Growing up, I immediately realized that my opinions did not matter. My dreams were unimportant. My feelings? Either disregarded or mocked. My sister failed a test because I distracted her. When she lost a buddy, I was very likely the cause. When she broke something, I must have pushed her. And my mother? She believed her. Every single time. I strived to be a perfect daughter. I worked hard. Received good grades. I remained silent as they insulted me. I never acted out. Never fought back. I hoped that if I demonstrated my worth, they would eventually love me as much as they loved her. However, nothing changed. And suddenly everything came crumbling down. It began with an argument. Well, they were arguing. I was just standing there and letting them rant. My sister had failed a class and, rather than accepting responsibility, blamed me. Again. I didn't know how. Perhaps I stressed her out simply by being. "You've ruined our lives," she exclaimed. I barely had time to respond before my mother added, "We'd be happier without you." And that was it. The moment that left me broken. I did not cry. I did not yell. I did not beg them to take it back. I just nodded. Then I turned around, walked to my room, got a backpack, and packed whatever I could fit. They did not stop me. They did not even watch me depart. Just like that. I was gone. I stepped outside into the night, the weight of my backpack pressing against my shoulders. However, nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I walked without a destination. simply putting distance between myself and the house I'd never fully called home. It was frigid. I recall that vividly. The air nipped at my skin, but I didn't shudder. I was numb. I had always imagined leaving would be spectacular, like in the movies. Maybe with tears rolling down my cheeks. Maybe with one final lingering look at the house I was leaving. However, there was none of it. No one pursued me. Nobody called my name. Nobody cared that I didn't know where to go. I had no plans. There's no safety net. My savings? Laughable. I had a few $100s put away from modest tutoring gigs, but I knew one thing for sure: I'd never go back. I chose a cheap motel for the night and paid for a single room with trembling hands. I glanced at the bed but couldn't make myself lie down. Instead, I sat at the small desk, the weak yellow light flickering above me, trying to decide what to do next. I did not have a degree. I didn't have any connections. I barely had any money. But I had one advantage. I'd spent my whole life being ignored. Underestimated. Nobody had ever handed me anything. If I was going to succeed, I'd have to create something from nothing. I began with what I knew. Studying. It sounded ludicrous at the time, but I was really excellent at it. I had spent years excelling in school, instructing other students, and assisting individuals with complicated subjects. Maybe, just maybe, I can make that into something. The next day, I went to a small cafe, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and utilized the free Wi-Fi to apply for every online tutoring opportunity I could find. I kept my charges low, just enough to entice folks to notice me. Initially, it was just enough to get by. I lived on quick noodles and dollar store foods. I rented a room in a shared apartment with 3 strangers who barely knew I existed. However, it was still better than where I had come from. Because every day, I awoke knowing that no one would yell at me. Nobody would blame me for their failings. Nobody would say I was wrecking their life. And it was enough. The months have passed. My tutoring opportunities grew. 1 client became 3. 3 multiplied into 10. I soon made enough money to move into a tiny studio apartment that was scarcely larger than a box. But it was mine. Despite all of this, my family never phoned. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not on holidays. Not even to see if I was alive. It hurts, as old wounds do. Deep. Silent. Lingering. But I assured myself everything was good. If they did not care, neither did I. A year into my new existence, things began to alter. I had established a reputation as an instructor specializing in college entrance tests. Students from all throughout the country reached out, begging for assistance. However, I was still trading time for money. And I knew it wasn't sustainable. That's when I had an idea. What if I combined my lessons into something bigger? Something scalable? I spent several months researching digital marketing. Watching hours of free YouTube content. I read every article I could find. Then, I began designing my own online course. The ultimate AITA preparation guide. There was a risk. I spent every spare money I had on developing the course, creating a website, and running advertisements. Sales began slowly, 1 here and 2 there. Then something changed. Word of mouth spread. Students began raving about my approaches and shared them online. And, almost overnight, it burst. I awoke one morning to see that my sales had tripled. Then quadrupled. Within a few months, I was earning more than I had ever dreamed imaginable. I moved into a swanky high-rise apartment, the kind I used to fantasize about. I traveled. I met folks who genuinely respected me. Created friendships that were not based on obligation or blood. I'd done it. I'd created myself from nothing. And my family? They were nowhere to be found. Not a single message. Not a single call. They didn't care about me. Until this morning. My phone vibrated. I scarcely looked at it. Then I noticed the notifications. Mom has 6 missed calls. Sister has 8 missed calls. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. After all this time, they had made it apparent that they never wanted me. I let out a slow breath. I'd changed. I wasn't the helpless, needy girl they had kicked out of their life. I wasn't their punching bag anymore. Whatever they wanted, this was not supposed to be an apology. And I had no intention of making things easy for them. I sat there and stared at the screen. For what seemed like hours. But in actuality, it just took a few minutes. My thoughts raced. What could they want after all this time? Mom has never apologized for the way she treated me. She'd never revealed that she always picked my sister above me. And my sister? She hadn't even realized I was gone. Until now. But now. After all, they wanted me. I eventually decided to pick up. It was almost weird to hear her voice after so long. "Hello?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Sweetie, please, we need to talk." Mom's voice quivered. "Sweetie? After everything?" She hadn't called me that in years. The phony compassion wounded. "What's going on?" I inquired, not masking my disbelief. There was a prolonged pause. We've fallen on hard times," Mom explained, her voice quivering. "Your sister, she's been having trouble at school again, and with everything going on, we just don't have enough." She said with hesitation. "We need your help." I bit my lip, a strange combination of satisfaction and wrath welling up inside me. Was this why they called me now? "What kind of assistance?" I inquired, keeping my voice calm. "We need money," she said abruptly. "Your sister's tuition. It's due. And we have bills we can't pay. I know we've never been there for you, but please. We're struggling. We need you to help us. We know it's a lot to ask, but please, we've tried everything." I could hear her sniffles. Perhaps it was genuine. Perhaps it was just guilt attempting to make its way back in. "Please," she repeated. "We need you back. We need your support." The words remained in the air. My support. They had been rejecting this assistance for years. I closed my eyes for a while, attempting to calm the flood of emotions that threatened to choke me. How could they think this was acceptable? For the first time in a long time, I felt more than apathy. It was hilarious. "You're serious?" I inquired, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You really think I'll come back and help you? After everything?" There was a gap followed by my mother's anxious cry. "Please don't do this. We know we messed up, but we're your family. You can't just leave us like this." I clenched my fist. "You never cared about me when I needed you," I replied, my voice shaking with restrained rage. "You were too busy with your golden child. You let me disappear. You told me you'd be better off without me." I paused, feeling wrath well up in my chest. But I kept it in check. I was not going to let them know how deeply they had hurt me. I was not going to let them turn this around on me. "I don't owe you anything," I said, my words as cutting as glass. Another prolonged delay. Then, "Why?" My sister's voice rang out next, agitated and panicked. I know I was horrible to you. But I need your help. I messed up, okay? I didn't mean it. I've been trying to fix things, but I don't know what to do anymore." I nearly laughed. "Fix things? How can you treat years of pain?" "I don't want your apologies," I replied bitterly. "And I don't owe you my money or my help. You can figure it out, just like I did. But please, just..." My sister's voice wavered, but I shut it off. You should have thought about this before you kicked me out of your lives." I could feel my heart race as I hung up the phone. However, the adrenaline was not solely derived from rage. It stemmed from satisfaction. Knowing they needed me gave me a sense of satisfaction. After years of silence and pretending I did not exist, they needed me. I stood up and paced the room, allowing the gravity of the situation to set in. They were not calling to apologize. They weren't calling because they had missed me. They were phoning because they wanted me to remedy their mess. And while they struggled, they recognized what they had thrown away. But that didn't matter to me. They did not deserve me anymore. I was finished. But deep down, a part of me wanted to make them beg even longer. Make them uncomfortable. The phone vibrated again. I glanced at the screen. Mom, again. Her message carried the same desperate tone. "Please. I know we can't undo the past, but we need you." I grinned. They had no idea what they were getting into. The phone vibrated again. The screen flashed with another message from my mother. "Please, I'm begging you. We don't know where else to turn." I stared at the message, my finger hovering above the screen. Part of me wanted to dismiss it completely. Following all. Hadn't I previously answered them? But the desperation in her tone made me hesitate. For a time. Then I shook my head. I was not going to soften. I was not going to be the one to improve their lives again. The thing is, I'd constructed something for myself. My empire, so to speak. My achievement wasn't solely about money. It was about the ability to choose who would be a part of my life. And my family? They no longer deserved that luxury. I put the phone down. I walked to the window. I looked out at the city. From this vantage point, everything seemed far away. So little. My former life's troubles felt like they belonged to someone else. I wasn't that person anymore. I was not their burden. Nevertheless, the messages kept pouring. I took a breath. I was not going to give in. I was not going to let them influence me with their guilt. But, deep down, there was a flare of something. Perhaps it was a pity. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps something darker. But I resisted. The following morning, I awoke to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Again. A quick peek at the screen confirmed it was from my sister. This time, I paused. Should I bother reading this? But my thumb swiped across the screen before I could think about it any longer. The message came in. I know I can't change the past, but I've been trying so hard to get into college. They rejected me, and now Mom's saying that if we don't get the money for the retake, I'll never make it. Please. Please. I'm so sorry. I felt an unusual sensation. Not sympathetic, not guilty. But something made me halt. Was this genuine? Was my sister really begging me? Or was she simply doing her part? I took a deep breath, my hand trembling as I typed my response. You never cared when I needed you. Why should I care now? I pressed send. The weight that settled in my chest felt heavier than I anticipated. A part of me felt cold and detached. I had built some protective armor over the years. But there's another part of me. It wanted to believe her. But I could not. I continued to work throughout the day. But, every time I looked at my phone, there were additional notifications. Calls. Texts. Voicemails. They were unrelenting. I could feel their desperation creeping through the screen and the words. They were beginning to disintegrate under the weight of their own decisions. But what did they expect of me? They'd made their bed. They'd picked their route. Now was the time for them to face the consequences. But then, at 7 p.m., I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. A note from Mom. I need to talk to you. This isn't just about money. I know I messed up, we messed up. But I'm asking you, as a mother, to come home. I need you. We need you. Please don't leave us like this. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered above the keyboard. I briefly pondered calling her back. Perhaps I could hear her out. Maybe I can find a way to make this work. But then, I thought about what they had put me through. They treated me as if I did not matter. I was not going to forget that. I was not their savior. With a long exhale, I typed. You had your chance. I'm done. I pressed send. And something within me cracked. I knew I'd made the proper decision. At the same time, I felt a lingering ache in my chest. Because deep inside, I couldn't help wondering. What if this was their final scream for help? What if they truly were suffering? But in the end, I learned one thing. I could not repair them. They were beyond rescuing. If they wanted anything from me, it needed to be on my terms. I put my phone down and attempted to forget about them. But the following evening, while I was sitting in my living room, going through my phone, I heard a knock on the door. A sharp and fast rap. There was a pause afterwards. I looked up, puzzled. Who might that be? I stood up and moved toward the door, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on edge. Something did not feel right. Looking through the peephole, my stomach sank. There they were. Mom. Dad. My sister. I am standing on my porch. They looked like they hadn't slept for days. Their faces were worn, drawn, and pale. But it wasn't only their appearance that made my pulse quicken. It was the fact that they had arrived here. Uninvited. I hesitated for a time, unsure what to do. Part of me wished to ignore them. Turn around and walk away, pretending I hadn't noticed them. But the wrath I had been suppressing surged up. I wasn't about to let them enter my space, not after all they had done. I opened the door just enough to see them clearly, my heart pounding in my chest. What are you doing here? I questioned, my voice low and angry. Mom stepped forward first, her eyes wide with despair. Please, please, just hear us out, she begged, her voice shaking. I stared at her. The same woman who said she'd be better off without me. Who had repeatedly shoved me aside. So now, she was standing on my porch, pleading for assistance. What the hell are you doing here? I asked, my voice rising. You think just because you show up at my door, I'm going to take you back? You think I'm going to forget everything you've done? Dad shuffled uneasily behind Mom but did not speak. My sister stood next to him, staring at the ground and avoiding my look. We're sorry, Mom admitted, her voice breaking. We've been trying to reach you, but we know we've messed up. It's just so hard, and we don't know what else to do. You're the only one who can help us. The only one who can help you. I felt the rage surge like a tidal wave. You didn't need me before. Why now? You had years to fix this, I retorted. Years. And you never once bothered to reach out. To make things right. Not when it mattered. And now you think you can just show up here and make everything okay? They remained silent for a minute, evidently surprised by my coolness. Mom's eyes filled with tears. But I could not force myself to care. We've been struggling, she said in a desperate whisper. We don't have money for rent. Your sister's future is slipping away. I don't know what else to do. I clenched my fist. Don't tell me you don't know what else to do, I exclaimed, my voice quivering with rage. You had choices. You made choices. And I wasn't part of them. But now that everything's falling apart, suddenly you want me? Mom took a step forward, hand outstretched. Please, just listen. I slammed the door on her face. The sound resonated throughout the home. The boom rang in my ears. And for a brief moment, I felt a rush of power. I could finally take control of this situation. But while I stood there with my hand on the door handle, something gnawed at me. Something twisted in my stomach. It wasn't a case of guilt, it was terrible. It was the knowledge that they'd come here, to me, because they had nowhere else to go. And they had shown up. Not because they wanted to improve our connection, not because they were genuinely remorseful, but they needed me, and I despised it. They did not deserve me. But rage was not the only emotion I felt. A part of me wanted to hurt them. To show them how terribly they had messed up. Make them suffer the consequences of their own conduct. And the fact that they assumed they could simply walk up on my doorstep. It got me angry more than anything else. I moved away from the door, leaving them standing on the other side. But they did not leave. I could hear them conversing outside. Mom was pleading. My sister was crying. Dad was attempting to console them. I couldn't take it anymore. The rage within me was tremendous, and I knew I'd regret not doing something. So I reopened the door. There they were. Standing there. Still waiting. Desperation was written all over their features. Mom's eyes were red from crying. My sister hung her head low in shame, and Dad? He appeared defeated. Like a man who had lost everything and had no idea how to get it back. For a moment, I simply stood there, taking in the view of them. The family that had harmed me. The family had made me feel useless. Invisible. So now, they were here. Asking for assistance. But what do I owe them? Nothing. I took a deep breath. And then, without saying anything, I took one last glance at them. No. You don't get to come here and expect forgiveness just because you're struggling now. The words came out coldly. Hard. Like a scalpel cutting through the strain. I didn't feel any regret as I stated them. They deserved to hear the truth. You had years to fix this, I said, my tone steady but forceful. Years to realize what you lost. But you didn't care then. And I'm not going to be your solution now. I noticed Mom open her mouth in protest. But I held up my hand to silence her. I built my life. My success. From the ground up. And I'm not going to let you destroy it too. You don't get to come into my life and expect everything to magically change because you've hit rock bottom. Their eyes started welling up again. But I felt nothing. There is no guilt, no regret. Just some calm satisfaction. I knew I was finally putting myself first. Go, I stated simply, my tone unyielding. Fix your own mess, I'm done. I closed the door for the final time. Weeks have passed, and I continued living my life. My business has grown, my network expanded, and I felt more energized than ever. I had become the person I had always wished to be. The person who did not have to apologize for their accomplishments. The one who had learned to let go of the negative aspects of their history. I never heard from them again. Not a message. Not a call. And you know what? It was fine. It was the tranquil peace I hadn't realized I'd been seeking. And as time passed, I came to realize something important. The ones who have wronged you, those who abandoned you, are not the people you should seek validation. You are the one who matters. You get to select what happens to your future. In the end, I had discovered one very simple truth. You can't keep giving to individuals who have never given you anything back. The door closed. For good. After 12 years building my father's company to $75 million, he gave it to my brother. Did they really think I'd just accept that? After 12 years of operating my father's company, I finally increased its value to $75 million. At a family supper, my father glanced at me and smiled. Your brother will take over now. My heart dropped, but I smiled back. The following morning at work, everything changed. I vividly remember my father's smile that night, his hand resting proudly on my brother's shoulder, as if he had already made up his mind before saying the words that would change everything. "Your brother will take over now." I felt my stomach plummet, but years of skill kept my expression calm. I smiled back, like if his words hadn't pierced right through me, unraveling 12 years of my life's work in an instant. The dining room was alive with the clinking of glasses and the gentle hum of talks among extended relatives and close business associates. This was more than just a family dinner, it was a celebration. A minute to honor everything we had built. Everything I'd built. My father founded Harper & Company when I was a child, a small logistics company that struggled to stay alive during its early years. I grew up watching my father fight to keep things going, working late hours, forgoing family holidays, and always pursuing the next contract to make ends meet. When I was 24, fresh out of business school, he eventually let me in. Though I had to fight for the opportunity. And I had done more than simply step in. Harper & Company had grown from a struggling regional logistics concern to a nationwide powerhouse under my leadership, with operations expanded, million-dollar contracts secured, and cutting-edge technology integrated. What was once a small, virtually bankrupt company has grown into an industry leader valued at $75 million. But, at this moment, none of it mattered. My father had already made the decision. My brother Ethan would take over. Not me? A gentle wave of approval rippled over the table, with murmurs of congratulations directed toward Ethan. I watched as he lowered his gaze, pretending modesty. Though I knew better. Ethan had never completely invested in the firm. He'd spent the last decade jumping from one failed business to the next, never quite finding his feet. He was not interested in logistics. He was not interested in operations. However, he was interested in power. I'd spent 12 years proving myself, starting Harper & Company from the bottom up, making every difficult decision, late-night strategy call, and contract negotiation. Ethan hadn't done any of it. And yet here we were. Nonetheless, I swallowed my emotions. I'd learned a long time ago that exhibiting pain was considered a weakness in this household. I reached for my wine glass and steadied my hand before lifting it. "Lisa? Smile. Smile." "To Ethan," I replied, my voice smooth and controlled. The visitors raised their glasses, unaware of the tempest developing behind my eyes. My mother looked at me from across the table, an unreadable expression on her face. But I knew she understood. Unlike my father, Mom had always recognized the effort I put in. But she refused to interfere. She never did. Then there was my father, smiling with the same unflinching assurance, fully oblivious that his decision had put something in motion. Ethan met my eyes from across the table, a smirk barely visible on the corner of his lips. That was the moment I knew. This was not solely my father's decision. Ethan had waited for this. He had carefully positioned himself, portraying the loyal son who had finally discovered his purpose. My father, a staunch conservative, saw no problem in his rationale. The kingdom should be passed down from father to son. A daughter's efforts were always viewed as temporary, a footnote in history, no matter how hard she worked to show different. But what they didn't realize, and none of them had considered, was that I had spent the previous 12 years not only developing a company, but also consolidating my position inside it. And the next morning, they'd figure out what that meant. That night, I hardly slept. My thoughts replayed every sacrifice I'd made for Harper & Company, late nights, missed birthdays, and relationships strained under the weight of my desire. I had given everything to this company. And now they expect me to just step aside? They'd underestimated me. By 3 a.m., I was in my home office, typing furiously on my keyboard. Each contract, every share, all executive agreements. Nobody knew how this company worked better than I did. Ethan expected a smooth transition, that by next week, his name would be on the office door, and his employment would be guaranteed. What he didn't realize was that while my father was busy making public appearances and my brother was busy pretending to understand the business, I had secured something much more valuable. Control. I entered Harper & Company headquarters at exactly 8:45 a.m., as I had done for the previous 12 years. The same walls. The same polished floors. The same hum of efficiency persisted as staff settled into their routines. But today was different. Today, I didn't walk into my office, I was walking into a battleground. The reception area was unusually quiet, the type of silence that comes before a storm. They knew. The whispers had already begun. The story of my father's declaration during dinner had circulated quickly. Employees looked at me with uncomfortable looks, avoiding direct eye contact, unsure where their loyalty should rest. I did not acknowledge them. I strolled confidently, my heels tapping on the marble flooring, my stance solid. Never show them you are disturbed. I entered my office. Shutting the door behind me, I had exactly 15 minutes until my father and Ethan arrived, expecting them to take over as CEO and heir apparent respectively. 15 minutes before their entire strategy disintegrated in front of them. I sat at my desk, inhaled deeply, and then turned on my computer. The screen displayed a list of sensitive documents and contracts that they had never considered looking at and assumed did not matter. I opened my ownership records, lingering my hands over the keyboard for a moment before clicking on the file labeled Executive Shareholder Agreement. And then I waited. A strong knock on my door came at precisely 9 a.m. I did not bother answering. The door opened, and my father and Ethan strolled in, both exuding confidence. His, inborn. Ethan's, carefully crafted. My father walked in like a monarch surveying his realm, and Ethan, dressed in an expensive navy suit, flashed me a smug, triumphant grin. It took everything I had not to laugh. My father said, "Lisa," in his customary forceful tone, as if acknowledging me was a favor. "I assume you're aware of the transition happening today?" Transition. Interesting wording. "I'm aware," I replied easily, reclining back in my chair. I looked at Ethan, whose smirk became wider. "Good," my father said, nodding as if we all agreed. "Ethan will be stepping in as the new CEO. We'll need you to help with the handover, get him familiar with the operations before you officially move on." I raised an eyebrow. "Move on?" I repeated, faking ignorance. "Dad, I think you're mistaken about something." His face twitched with annoyance. He was used to my silent cooperation and ability to follow instructions. He was unprepared for this. "Lisa," he murmured, his voice tight, like if addressing a child. "This isn't up for debate, we've already made the decision." I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Oh, I know, Dad," I answered softly. "The thing is, you don't have the authority to make that decision." Ethan scoffs quietly and shakes his head. "Lisa, don't make this difficult, we're trying to do this the easy way." I did not respond. Instead, I went for my remote and clicked a button. The enormous screen on my office wall displayed a document that I had been examining earlier. Executive Shareholders Agreement signed on August 17, 2015. Signatories, Lisa Harper, James Harper, father, and Ethan Harper. My father's face paled somewhat. I turned to Ethan. "Do you even know what this document is?" He crossed his arms and shifted in discomfort. "A shareholders agreement?" he wondered. I nodded. "Yes. And do you know what it says?" I tapped the screen to highlight an important clause. This document was drafted when Harper & Company was restructuring. It clearly states that any transfer of executive power, such as appointing a new CEO, requires the approval of all majority shareholders. I caught my father's gaze. "And I, Dad, hold 60% of the company's shares." The hush that followed was smothering. My father's expression darkened. "That's impossible," Ethan whispered as he moved forward to examine the page. "Actually, it's very possible," I replied calmly. "You see, over the years, while you were busy failing at every startup you touched, and Dad was busy playing the role of business patriarch, I was doing something else." I leaned forwards. I was securing my place. I turned back to face my father. "Remember when you needed capital for expansion in 2017? You agreed to give me an additional 15% of your shares in exchange for my investment. And in 2019, when we had that court dispute, another 10% was transferred under my name as collateral, which you never bothered to reclaim. That, plus my original 35%, gives me the controlling stake." My dad's jaw clenched. "But, Ethan..." Ethan was in a panic. "You have to be bluffing," he exclaimed. I took out a second document. "This is the most recent legal filing with the state. Want to verify?" Ethan took the paper and scanned it, his face losing color with every passing second. "You can't do it," he muttered. "Dad, tell her she can't do this." My father stayed silent. Because he knew. I had lawfully outmaneuvered him. And he couldn't do anything about it. I sighed softly and stood up. "I'm not firing you, Ethan," I explained. "I don't want to force you into the real job market, but you will report to me and work under my guidance. Otherwise..." I motioned to the door. "You're free to leave." Ethan looked at my father, his eyes begging, but for the first time in his life, my father had no response. There was no way to fix it, because it wasn't his company anymore. That was my. The silence in my workplace felt oppressive. Ethan still held the official document in his hand, his fingers white from holding it too firmly. My father remained motionless beside him, his expression unreadable. But I knew better. He was calculating, trying to figure a way out of this. There was not one. I had spent years preparing for this moment, not because I expected treachery, but because experience had taught me never to presume loyalty in situations of authority. For the first time in my life, my father didn't recognize me. Maybe he never had. Is that it? Ethan eventually spoke, his voice tinged with resentment. Are you just taking everything? I laughed softly, without humor. Are you taking everything? I repeated, moving closer to him. Ethan, I created this company from nothing. I made every contract, expansion, and innovation a reality. While you were busy failing above, I was keeping this company running. So no, I am not taking anything. I leaned in slightly. I'm just keeping what's already mine. Ethan's face contorted in rage, but he had no response. He knew I was correct. And worse, so did my father. He had spent years believing that bloodline was more important than skill. That his son would receive what was properly mine. He'd underestimated me. And now he had to pay for his folly. My father eventually ended the hush. You're making a mistake, Lisa. His voice was calm and calculated, but I could sense the pressure underlying. Families should stick together. Do you truly want to end this relationship? I met his eyes unflinchingly. Dad, I said, you burned this bridge the moment you made your decision without me. His lips form a thin line. Business is larger than one person, we can develop a solution that benefits everyone. I cocked my head slightly, simulating interest. Oh, I agree. I let the words hang in the air before proceeding. That's why I'm offering you both a choice. I went to Ethan first. You can stay with the company, I added, keeping my voice smooth and professional. But you will not be CEO. You will serve as an advisor with limited authority. Your compensation will be generous, but you will report to me. Ethan stiffened, but I did not stop. Or, I added, you can walk away. I will acquire your shares at market value. You can take the money and start working on a new project. My dad scoffed. You're acting like you hold all the cards. I smiled. I do. My words were followed by a dense hush. I let them sit in it, let them experience what it was like to be powerless. Finally, my father breathed, shaking his head in astonishment. I never thought you'd do this, he grumbled. Not to your own family. At his comments, I felt a searing pang. Not for your own family. I wanted to tell him he was the one who did it. That he chose to cast me aside, as if I were only temporary. But I did not. In the end, it didn't matter. What was important was that I would not let them remove what I had built. Not now. Not ever. Ethan was the first to storm out. Good riddance. I knew my brother well enough to anticipate his next action. He would approach our relatives and family acquaintances, presenting himself as a victim of corporate deception. I didn't care. I was not here to win their approval. I came here to win my future. My father waited for a while longer, as if expecting me to alter my mind. When I didn't respond, he nodded slowly. You've changed, he stated gently. I met his gaze. No, Dad. I just finally stopped pretending. Then he departed. I breathed and returned to my chair. I should have felt victorious. I had fought for my position, and won. But as I glanced at the vacant doorway, I sensed something else. A soft, lingering aching. A part of me had always wished for my father's approval. Some small, desperate part of me believed that if I worked hard enough and proved myself repeatedly, he would eventually see me. But he never truly looked. So now he had no choice but to see me for who I truly was. Not his daughter, not his temporary replacement. The genuine boss of Harper & Company. I returned to my computer, my attention changing. I had spent 12 years creating this business. Now I'd spend the next 12 years making it untouchable. My father and brother attempted to take everything from me. But in the end, they were the ones who had lost everything. For the first time in 12 years, my workplace felt empty. There were no phone calls from my father. Ethan sent no passive-aggressive emails, just silence. But silence did not indicate serenity. It meant the struggle had started. I knew my father wouldn't leave peacefully. And Ethan? He would fight tooth and nail to restore what he believed was his birthright. I wasn't naive enough to believe this was over. It had just begun. By the next morning, I could detect an undercurrent of discomfort in the company. Employees who had greeted me with confidence last week now appeared nervous. As if they were terrified to choose a side. Several department heads avoided eye contact. I knew exactly what was going on. My father and Ethan were using the Whisper network. Old family pals, Board members. Senior executives. They were spreading doubts, painting myself as frigid, ruthless, disloyal. Ethan, in particular, had taken on the character of the wounded son, betrayed by his sister. I could see him now, seated in a high-end restaurant, pretending to be sorry as he told our investors how I had taken the firm from him. And what about my father? He would not need to say much at all. Just a deep sigh. A shaky head. The neatly arranged words. I only ever wanted the best for my children. It was calculated. And risky. Because, if they could turn my board members and senior executives against me, they may force me out of my own company. At the very least, make my leadership impossible. I wasn't going to let that happen. That afternoon, I scheduled an emergency executive meeting. As I entered the boardroom, I could feel the tension in the air. Half of the room averted my gaze. The other half observed me too closely, waiting for me to slip. I took a seat at the head of the table. My seat. Let's not waste time, I added, my tone steady. I know there have been conversations, behind closed doors, over drinks, in hushed voices. I let my gaze sweep the room, pausing on each individual just long enough to cause them to squirm uncomfortably. I'm also aware that some of you are asking if my leadership is sustainable. Several folks tensed. Nobody spoke. I tapped my fingers on the polished wooden table. Let's clear that up now. I displayed a presentation on the screen behind me. Numbers, data, facts. I transformed this company from a struggling regional business to a $75 million industry leader. Under my leadership, we've increased sales by 300% over the last 5 years and entered 6 new markets. I turned to the CFO. Paul, do we have a single financial indicator suggesting this company is in trouble under my leadership? Paul hesitated before shaking his head. In fact, projections show another 20% growth in the next quarter. I nodded. So let's be honest about what's happening here. I leaned forwards. My father and brother are not unhappy because the business is faltering. They are not upset because I am failing to lead. They are furious because they expected me to step aside and let Ethan take over. Regardless of qualification. Regardless of the outcome. The room was silent. Then I dropped the true bombshell. I also know that some of you have been contacted in the last 24 hours, offered incentives to push for my resignation. I tilted my head slightly. If anyone here would like to disclose those conversations now, this is your chance. Several folks shuffled uncomfortably. Then, after a lengthy period, one of the senior executives cleared his throat. I received a call, he said. From your father. He said he was considering making an official appeal to the board. I nodded, not surprised. And did he offer anything in return for your support? A pause. Then, a slow nod. There it is. I breathed and stood up. My father built this company, I replied. I will not dispute that. But I went further than he could have. And I will not let him manage it from the outside. I let my voice drop slightly, controlled and threatening. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. I gathered my papers and looked each executive in the eyes. If anyone here believes my father and brother deserve control, now is the time to make your move. Silence. Nobody moved. Good. I turned and went away, head held high. It wasn't just about keeping my company. This was to ensure that they never imagined they could take it from me again. That night, I made my own call. Not to any board member, not for an investor. But what about the media? By morning, the business section of every major news outlet featured the following headline. Power shift at Harper & Co., Lisa Harper outmaneuvers family in boardroom battle. I'd made my move. Now it was their turn. And I waited. My inbox burst the morning after my story went to publication. Emails. I missed calls. Messages from reporters, investors, and board members. Some were supportive. Some were cautious. However, most of them had one question in common. Is it true? I let them wait. I knew what game my father was playing. He had spent decades mastering the art of public perception. He understood that reputation was important in business. If he couldn't beat me in the boardroom, he would undercut me in public. And that was exactly what he was attempting to do. By lunchtime, the first counterattack had arrived. A press release is nicely made, precisely phrased, but full of lies. Harper & Company has always been a family-owned business. We are disappointed by recent occurrences, but we remain dedicated to sustaining the ideals that have driven this organization. Changes in leadership are unavoidable, and we expect to transition seamlessly as we move forward. It was subtle. But I knew what it was actually saying. Lisa is irresponsible. Lisa is unstable. Lisa isn't a team player. I was not surprised. I was, however, incensed. I sat in my office, watching the news as industry analysts argued over my leadership. Was Lisa Harper too aggressive in her takeover? Will her lack of cooperation hurt the company in the long run? Can she recover from this PR disaster? They spoke as if I wasn't watching. As if I hadn't already planned my next move. Because if my father and Ethan desired a public conflict, I was planning to give them one. I did not release a statement. I did not call a press conference. Instead, I placed one phone call. To an old buddy in investigative journalism. I have something for you, I explained. But you'll need to move fast. An hour later, I emailed over documents. Emails. Financial reporting. Internal records. Evidence. Harper & Company, under my father's guidance, had engaged in unethical business activities throughout time. I had spent the previous decade quietly cleaning up. The news broke within 24 hours. Behind the scenes at Harper & Company, a legacy of hidden debts and financial cover-ups. The piece was brutal. It applauded my leadership for improving the company's financial situation. It was critical of my father's mismanagement, but most importantly, it proved that I was the sole reason Harper & Company had survived. Just like that. The narrative changed. The board has stopped doubting me. The investors stopped hesitating. And what about my father? He had nowhere to hide. 2 days later, my father finally contacted me. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. Lisa, he murmured in a tense voice. We need to talk. I slumped back in my chair. Do we? Silence. Finally, a sigh. You didn't have to do that. I gave a tiny laugh. Neither did you? This company was supposed to be a legacy, he told me. For the family. For both of you. I had a familiar pain. A small, naive part of me had once desired that, but not anymore. Dad, I spoke gently. If you wanted me to safeguard the legacy, you should have trusted me with it. Instead, you attempted to steal it from me. Another prolonged stillness. He asked, almost reluctantly. What happens now? I breathed slowly. Now, I'm going to make sure you never touch my company again. The conflict was over. My father had lost. Ethan had vanished. And I'd won. However, when I sat in my office, staring out at the metropolitan skyline, I felt no happiness, no victory, just emptiness. I had spent the last 12 years fighting for Harper & Company, building it, safeguarding it, and making it stronger than ever. Nonetheless, the cost of that win outweighed my expectations. Because I had secured my position, I had misplaced something else along the road. My family. The next day, I came into the office as if nothing had happened. But everybody knew the truth. The whispers had ended. The doubt had dissipated. I was no longer simply Lisa Harper, CEO. I was Lisa Harper, the lady who outmaneuvered her father and brother and emerged victorious. Some people appreciated me for it. Some scared me because of it. And some were still waiting for me to fall. I let them wait. At midday, my father and I convened in the conference room for our final conversation. He seemed exhausted. Older, as if the weight of what had happened had finally fallen on his shoulders. I waited for him to speak first. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I'm retiring, he announced simply. Effective immediately. I did not react. I had anticipated this. I'll sell my remaining shares, he added. I'll keep a small percentage as an investor, but I won't be involved anymore. I examined him attentively. And Ethan? His jaw stiffened. He's gone, my father admits. Took the buyout, he won't be back. A part of me knew it would end like this. Ethan had never been strong enough to face his own difficulties. When he realized he had lost, he did what he always did. Run. Still, hearing it out made something inside me ache. No regret. Not guilty. Simply the finality of it all. I nodded. Understood. My father exhaled and rubbed his temples, as if he had a headache. Then, after a long gap, he said something unexpected. I underestimated you. It was not an apology, but it was as close as I'd ever come. And strangely, I realized I didn't need it anymore. A month later, Harper & Company looked nothing like it did previously. Who were the previous board members who supported my father and Ethan? Gone. What about the executives who had questioned my leadership? Replaced? The company had always performed well under my leadership. But now, it was absolutely mine. And with that control comes a new perspective. I introduced proposals that my father had consistently rejected. He has described modernized systems as unnecessary. He ventured into industries that he had previously avoided. Within 6 months, profits skyrocketed. Within a year, we had reached the $100 million milestone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't battling solely to prove myself. I was fighting to create something that no one could take from me again. A year later, I met my father for dinner. It was the first time we had talked since his retirement. He looked different. Quieter. He wasn't angry now. Simply accepting. I read about the latest deal you closed, he continued as he drank. It was a smart move. I smirked faintly. I know. A shadow of a smile appeared on his lips. There was no longer tension between us. There is no war left to fight. Just the simple, undeniable truth. He'd tried to push me aside. And I had proven him incorrect. He lifted his glass. To Harper and Company, he stated. This time, as I clinked my glass with his, I did not feel angry. I didn't feel resentful. Only tranquility. Because I'd already won. And I no longer needed his permission to know it. As I sit in my office now, overlooking the city where I built my empire, I reflect on the lessons this trip has taught me. That family might be your greatest adversary. Loyalty is a currency, not a promise. That power is never given. It's taken. But more importantly, sometimes, the finest method to prove your worth is to quit seeking validation and create something so powerful that they can never ignore you again. I don't have any regrets. Harper and Company are now mine. And I aim to make sure that no one forgets it. On my wedding day, I exposed my fiancée and stepmother's affair, causing my father to collapse from shock. It's an unimaginable situation, and even now I can hardly believe this is my reality. Writing this down feels like the only way to process what happened. My mother passed away when I was 16, leaving my father utterly heartbroken. For 2 years, he devoted himself entirely to raising me and my younger sister Claire. Then he met Amanda, who became his wife and our stepmother. At first, I was resistant to her presence. I felt no one could ever replace my mom. But Amanda never tried to take her place. Instead, she positioned herself as a friend, someone supportive and understanding. Over time, she earned my trust. She helped me pick out prom dresses, gave me advice about college, and was always there when I needed someone to talk to about relationships. Eventually, I considered her family. 4 years ago, I met Henry at work. He seemed perfect, successful, charming, and the type of person who could light up a room. What really stood out was how effortlessly he fit into my family. He bonded with my dad over golf, chatted with Claire about her favorite reality shows, and formed a connection with Amanda through their shared love of yoga and meditation. After 2 years of dating, Henry proposed during a family trip. It felt like a dream come true. Amanda was deeply involved in the wedding preparations, helping with everything from choosing the venue to attending my dress fittings. I thought I was incredibly lucky to have such a supportive stepmother. 2 days before the wedding, everything unraveled. My cousin Ben, one of Henry's groomsmen, asked to speak to me privately. He looked pale, almost sick, as he showed me a video he had recorded during Henry's bachelor party. In the video, Henry, visibly drunk, bragged about his affair with Amanda. He described how it started at last year's Christmas party and revealed in excruciating detail how they would meet at hotels while pretending she was attending yoga classes. What broke me was his admission that proposing to me was just a ploy to keep their affair hidden. Shocked and devastated, I didn't know what to do. But Ben encouraged me to dig deeper, so we did. We recovered deleted text messages between Henry and Amanda, uncovering hundreds of exchanges where they planned their meetings. Amanda's credit card bills showed frequent charges at hotels on days she was supposedly at yoga. I even went to the hotels they used the most. One manager recognized them and allowed me to view security footage of them checking in together multiple times. The evidence was overwhelming. It was like a nightmare. While I had been working extra hours to save for our wedding, my fiancée was betraying me with my stepmother. At first, I considered canceling the wedding quietly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that wouldn't be enough. Canceling without explanation would leave room for whispered rumors and twisted narratives, likely painting me as the irrational one. No, they needed to be exposed for who they truly were. On the day of the wedding, instead of walking down the aisle in my expensive white dress, I arrived wearing jeans and an old t-shirt. Guests were confused, whispering amongst themselves. Amanda rushed over, trying to escort me to the bridal suite, insisting we could fix whatever was wrong. Henry looked nervous but tried to act calm and collected. I took my place at the altar. When it came time for the vows, I signaled to the AV technician we had hired to handle the video screens. Instead of our carefully curated wedding video, the footage from Henry's bachelor party began playing. Every shocking, vile detail echoed through the speakers. Then came the security footage from hotels and their text message exchanges, displayed for all 200 guests to see. The room erupted into chaos. Amanda tried to escape, but my uncles blocked the exits. Henry stood frozen, stammering that he had been drunk and joking in the video. My father, overwhelmed by the betrayal, collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. Afterward, some guests criticized me, saying I went too far and should have handled the situation privately. But after enduring over a year of lies and humiliation, I felt they deserved every second of public exposure. If they had wanted privacy, they should have thought of that before betraying me and my family so thoroughly. Now, my father remains in the hospital under observation. The stress of everything has taken a toll on his health. Amanda hasn't returned home since that day, and Henry continues to call and text me, begging for a chance to explain himself. I've blocked his number on every platform, but he finds new ways to try to reach me. Claire, my sister, is staying with me because she doesn't want to be alone in the house, surrounded by the memories of what Amanda and Henry did. As I try to piece my life back together, I'm left grappling with the realization that every happy memory from the past few years, family dinners, vacations, holidays, feels tainted. Were those moments of laughter and connection genuine, or were they just opportunities for Amanda and Henry to sneak around behind my back? The betrayal cuts deeper than I ever imagined. For now, I'm focusing on supporting my father and Claire as we navigate this storm together. I don't know what the future holds, but one thing is certain. At least the truth is out. They can no longer hide behind the facade of family unity and love. It's a small comfort, but it's a step toward healing. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since I exposed Henry and Amanda during my faux wedding, and things have only gotten worse. I assumed that playing the video would be the end of it, that they would flee in humiliation and I would be able to start rebuilding my life. Instead, it feels as if I've opened Pandora's box. Amanda has emerged, not to apologize or express regret, but to try to dominate the story. She wrote a dramatic email to our entire extended family, friends, and even some of my workplace. She portrayed herself as an innocent victim, duped by Henry. She said my father was constantly working, which he wasn't, and that she was lonely and vulnerable, which she also wasn't. According to her, Henry chased her constantly until she caved in. In her email, she mentioned that she felt stuck and couldn't tell anyone since she didn't want to break up our family. She even had the arrogance to imply that she only helped arrange the wedding because she was looking for an excuse to break up with Henry. The entire email was filled with lies and phony apologies about how she never intended to upset me. Then my cousin, who had taped the bachelor party video, decided to probe deeper. He works in IT and understands how to recover deleted emails. He discovered years of correspondence between Amanda and Henry, going back to when I was still in college, long before Henry and I met. They actually knew each other from the yoga studio where Henry used to work as an instructor. Amanda was one of his frequent students. During my final year of college, when I was stressed out, Amanda became insistent that I try yoga. She expressly recommended this studio and often praised their professors, particularly Henry. She made sure I only attended courses when Henry was instructing, claiming they were the greatest for beginners. Looking back, I recall her asking extensive questions about the classes, whether I thought Henry was a competent teacher, and even if I found him appealing. She was literally orchestrating the entire romance. The worst revelation came when my father checked on our family beach property. He discovered a wooden box concealed in the back of their wardrobe, filled with love letters between Henry and Amanda. These letters were not simply recent. They dated back years. They laid forth their plan for Henry to marry me so they could continue their connection without suspicion. They even joked that I would never notice because I was too preoccupied with my work. The wedding video has circulated throughout our neighborhood. People who weren't even at the wedding witnessed it. Henry's groomsmen began providing additional information about what he said at the bachelor party that were not captured on tape. Apparently, he made several vulgar remarks about having a mother and a daughter. Then additional women started coming forward with stories about Amanda. 2 of Claire's high school friends contacted me independently. They both said Amanda attempted to seduce their elder brothers when they came over to study. One of the brothers was 19 at the time. Another member of our church confessed that Amanda had an affair with her husband 3 years ago. My stepmother appears to have a history of chasing younger men, particularly those connected to her daughters. My father was released from the hospital after 3 days, but he isn't the same person. His blood pressure remains elevated, and he rarely eats or sleeps. He spends the majority of his time in his study, looking through old photographs and family recordings. I visit him every day, but seeing him in such a way breaks my heart. He constantly apologizes to me, claiming that he should have spotted the indications. Henry finally stopped contacting me personally when I threatened him with a restraining order, but he has since propagated his own version of events. He claims I'm unstable and overreacted to innocent drunken conversation at his bachelor party. His family fully supports his lies. His mother even contacted me, saying I had ruined her son's life due to a misunderstanding. She argued that the hotel visits and messages could be explained if I only let Henry speak to me. I blocked her phone number. The ultimate blow came when Claire discovered Amanda's diary in a false bottom drawer in her craft room. What she described about her relationship with Henry made me physically ill. She described their encounters, future plans, and how they giggled about their secret at family gatherings. She even told her lover how much fun it was to help organize my wedding, selecting sites where they had already hooked up. Reading those diary notes destroyed something inside me. All the times I thanked her for her assistance with the wedding and confided in her about my connection with Henry, she was laughing behind my back. How did I miss what was going right in front of me? Update 2. It has been a month since my last report, and the situation has deteriorated in ways I never expected. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, something new emerges. The most significant development is that Henry lost his position at the investment firm. It comes out that his boss's wife attended the wedding and videotaped everything on her phone. The video spread across the office and eventually reached the company's board. They judged that Henry's actions reflected poor judgment and a lack of moral character. Because he dealt with high net worth clientele who trusted him with their money, the company concluded it couldn't take the risk of keeping him. Henry was dismissed last week without severance pay, but that's not the worst part. Amanda totally lost it. While my father was still suffering from everything, she emptied their joint accounts, taking nearly $200,000. She also grabbed all of the family jewels, including pieces that belonged to my mother and were intended to be passed down to me and Claire. My mother's engagement ring, her grandmother's pearls, and even the locket containing our infant pictures are all gone. Amanda left a dramatic statement, stating that years of mental manipulation and anguish pushed her to take drastic steps to protect herself. My father's lawyer is trying to find her, but she appears to have vanished. She even emptied her personal storage unit without anyone noticing. Claire eventually broke down and said something that made my blood boil. Last year, after her senior prom, she discovered Amanda attempting to seduce her boyfriend Tom. Claire had gone upstairs to change out of her outfit, while Tom waited in the kitchen. When she returned, she discovered Amanda cornered Tom against the fridge while wearing nothing but a silk robe. Tom appeared afraid. Amanda attempted to explain it as a misunderstanding, claiming she didn't expect anyone to be in the kitchen so late. She begged Claire not to tell anyone, fearing it would split the family. Claire, barely 18 at the time and terrified, remained silent. She broke up with Tom the next day, too embarrassed to tell him the true reason. More details concerning Henry and Amanda's affair emerge. Amanda's yoga friend contacted me, claiming Amanda and Henry's relationship at the yoga class was an open secret. Everyone assumed it was over when Henry moved to work in finance, but it appears they just became better at hiding it. The friend discovered old images from a yoga retreat of Henry and Amanda looking quite cozy, shot while Henry and I were already dating. Amanda's yoga acquaintance also noted that she had a reputation for getting too close to male pupils, particularly younger ones. The studio owner had admonished her several times to respect professional boundaries. This validates Claire's friend's claims about Amanda chasing their brothers. My father has started divorce proceedings, but he is not doing well. His blood pressure is alarmingly high, and his doctor has prescribed additional medication. He rarely leaves the house, save for sessions with his lawyer. Every fresh revelation concerning Amanda's dishonesty appears to age him an additional year. What hurts the most is that Amanda's betrayal extended far beyond the affair. She actively sought to get close to vulnerable younger males in her family. She preyed on Claire's boyfriend while he was barely out of high school, manipulating events to get her way while seeming to be a loving stepmother. I keep discovering concealed receipts from places I never knew existed, a burner phone in her garden shed, and gift cards and notes from Henry hidden in her old books. It's as if she had a secret existence that ran parallel to ours. Some of Henry's buddies have reached out to apologize. They admitted knowing about the affair but were too afraid to say anything. One of them said that Henry would boast about how easy it was to deceive me because I worked so hard. He preferred my lengthy hours since they allowed him more time with Amanda. The entire situation makes me feel unclean, as if every memory from the last 5 years, family dinners, holidays, vacations, is soiled. Were those just ways for them to sneak around behind my back? How many times did they laugh at me while professing to care about my well-being? Update 3. 6 months later, the fallout still. Amanda reappeared in Arizona, living with a 35-year-old yoga instructor she met on a retreat. She originally attempted to challenge the divorce, saying that she deserved half of everything because my father's work schedule drove her to infidelity. Her lawyer dropped the case after my father's legal team produced evidence of her numerous indiscretions and money theft. Amanda received nothing in the settlement other than her own items, including the jewels and money she had stolen. We found some of my mother's jewels in pawn shops. The proprietors were sympathetic to our story and let us buy back a few pieces at cost, but my mother's engagement ring and most of the family antiques are still gone. Amanda alleges she sold them for cash and squandered everything. Henry's life has gone apart. After losing his work, he was unable to pay for his apartment and returned to live with his parents. His attempts to find work at other investing businesses were unsuccessful, as no one wanted to hire him after what transpired. A video of his bachelor party confession went viral on LinkedIn, and it now displays when people search for his name. Amanda left him for her yoga instructor when he lost his job and money. He recently showed up intoxicated at Claire's college graduation celebration, weeping about how he gave up his life for Amanda. When he attempted to force his way into the room to speak with me, security had to forcibly remove him. Even his parents have stopped defending him and are advising him to relocate out of state for a new start. The wedding venue contacted us to refund our entire money. They even wanted to utilize our story anonymously as a cautionary tale in their new contracts, which now include provisions barring unauthorized video displays during ceremonies. My father is doing better physically. His blood pressure is under control, and he is gradually reconstructing his life. He sold the beach house, unable to endure the memory of their affair, and relocated to a smaller home closer to me and Claire. He's also unearthed writings that show how thoroughly Amanda exploited us over the years. She documented instances in which she gaslighted him, such as shifting his keys and pretending he was forgetful or lying about agreements they never made. She did the same thing to me and Claire, quietly diminishing our confidence while trying to be helpful. Claire is succeeding at college, dating again, and feels lighter since she no longer needs to worry about Amanda preying on her boyfriends. She's even reconnected with her previous boyfriend Tom, as friends, which has helped her heal from the trauma. As for me, I am not interested in dating right now. My pals continue to try to set me up, but I need time to trust again. The most difficult thing is not the betrayal directly, but recognizing that every good family memory from the last few years, family dinners, holidays, even tiny moments like watching TV together, was based on lies. I've moved to a new apartment in a different part of town, changed my phone number, and blocked Henry and Amanda across all platforms. Some people still believe I went too far with the public exposure, but I do not regret it. Sometimes the truth requires witnesses, and sometimes the only way to deal with toxic people is to shed light on their actions. To anyone experiencing a similar betrayal, believe your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. I spent years disregarding red signs because I wanted to believe in the ideal family life. Never again. My husband and mother-in-law treated me like a servant, mocking my efforts, demanding obedience, and making me feel invisible. Alex's words cut through the clatter of dishes like a keen scalpel. "Alara, bring me some tea now." I halted, my hands dipped in soapy water. "Hold on, I'm doing the dishes." "What?" His tone was incredulous and impatient. "Stop that and then bring me the tea right away. Can't you obey simple commands?" "But," I began, only to be interrupted. "What a useless wife you are." "Make me some sweet coffee," said another voice. Mrs. Whitmore, my mother-in-law, spoke from the living room. She sat there munching a slice of cake she had grabbed from the fridge, her eyes gleaming with malice. I sighed and looked at the stack of dishes. "There are so many. Leave them for later." "Just do what we say, useless wife," Alex's voice hissed, each syllable hurting. I was Alara, a 28-year-old working mother whose life felt more like a jail than a home. Married at 23, I had hoped for love and friendship, but instead found myself in the hands of Alex and his domineering mother. Our 4-year-old son was the only bright spot in an otherwise dark existence. We lived in Alex's parents' house, a decision foisted on me under the premise of caring for Mrs. Whitmore after my father-in-law died. Initially, I sympathized with her alleged anguish, but it quickly became evident that I was nothing more than a part in her cruel game of home oppression. Cooking, cleaning, and working just weren't enough. My attempts were treated with derision, and my meals were either left untouched or sharply ridiculed. "The stir-fry is so half-hearted," Mrs. Whitmore would remark. "Cook it properly from scratch." "I'm busy and can only do simple things," I'd say, trying to maintain a calm voice. "That's why I hate backtalk from my daughter-in-law," she quipped. "Cook from scratch? Why don't you cook? You are a good cook, correct?" I risked to react once and soon regretted it. Why would I do housekeeping with you here? She responded coldly and dismissively. Are you out of your mind? Their brutality grew with time, progressing from harsh words to a chilling quiet. They began to entirely disregard me, as if I were a ghost in my own home. My presence, which was previously underestimated, now appeared completely invisible. 5 years passed in this suffocating environment. Alex and I turned 35 and 33 respectively. Our son developed, but the unpleasant atmosphere in the house remained constant. My mother-in-law, now 63, appeared to thrive on my suffering. One evening, as I trudged home from work, a heavy revelation hit me. They saw my existence as meaningless. I was a shadow, unnoticed and unheard. The only voice that acknowledged me was my son's. The idea of losing even that minor recognition was agonizing. When I returned home, I started cooking right away, hoping to lift my spirits. I made mapo tofu, fried chicken, and a stir-fry with bell peppers and pork, attempting to bring some regularity to our dinner. Bring me the mayo, Alex said unexpectedly, breaking his long silence. Sure, here you are, I said, handing him the mayonnaise. His first words to me in ages were not thanks or discussion, but rather a command. It was the last straw, the limit of my patience and tolerance. Mrs. Whitmore demanded, clean the toilet. What? Now? I was shocked. Yes, now, she demanded, her voice full of hate. I snapped back, unable to suppress my annoyance. Don't say such a thing while we're eating. It's nasty, just like your heart, she said. Our dispute immediately escalated, with Alex interjecting and demanding that I apologize to his mother. But I refused, standing firm for the first time in years. The conflict reached its climax, and a conclusion formed within me. I needed to get out of this toxic environment, not just for myself, but also for my baby. I returned to my room, my determination stiffening. I downloaded divorce papers, completed them, and slapped them in front of Alex. His amazement was evident, but I felt just icy determination. I'm filing these, I announced, my voice firm. As I stood there, looking at my husband's puzzled expression, I realized I had finally stepped out of the shadows. It was time to regain my life. The days after I declared my divorce were a blur of frigid stares and stinging remarks, but in the midst of the chaos, I discovered an unexpected sense of freedom. Mrs. Whitmore looked at the food I was serving one evening with distaste. You call this food? Even a child cooks better. I bit my tongue, concentrating on my son's happy expression. Eat up, sweetheart. I made your favorite tonight. Alex added in, his voice full of sarcasm. Oh, playing the perfect mother now, are we? What a joke. I could feel my rage rising, but I held my cool. I'm just trying to make a nice dinner for our son. Mrs. Whitmore snorted. Don't act high and mighty. You're just a burden in this house. The tension around the table was apparent. Alex's attempts to insult me grew more intense. So, Alara, have you thought about how you'll survive after the divorce? You can barely keep a house, let alone your own life. I stared him directly in the eyes. I have been supporting this family for years. I'm not worried about taking care of myself and our son. His smirk faded somewhat, and a spark of concern appeared on his face. Mrs. Whitmore was quick to intercede. Don't be absurd. You need us more than we need you. The talk drifted to finances, which they typically avoided. You do realize that without my salary, this household would crumble, I said to myself rather than to them. Mrs. Whitmore sneered. We'd manage. We don't need your pity money. But Alex's silence spoke volumes. He understood the truth. They would be in serious financial trouble if I did not provide a living. Their behavior deteriorated during the next few days. Mrs. Whitmore alternated between trying to sweet-talk me into staying and shouting insults when I refused. Alex, on the other hand, appeared confused, his arrogance eroding as the reality of his financial dependency became clear. One afternoon, I overheard a talk between them that chilled me to the core. She can't just leave us like this, Alex growled. We need her money. Mrs. Whitmore's response was chilly and calculating. Do not worry. I have a plan. We'll make her life so unpleasant that she won't want to leave. Hearing their genuine objectives exposed was a revelation. They did not care about me or our son. It was all about power and wealth. That night, as I lay in bed, an idea began to emerge in my head. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. But it would not be fought with words or trivial disputes. I'd strike them where it hurts the most, their pride and their pocketbook. The following morning, I began putting my plan into action. I contacted a lawyer, a bright, no-nonsense woman who was highly recommended. I want a divorce, and I want to make sure they don't get a penny more than they deserve, I informed the woman. She nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "We'll make sure of it. You've been the only breadwinner, correct? We'll make use of that." My resolve got stronger with each passing day. I began documenting everything: insults, financial manipulation, and even little grievances. It was time to turn the tables. It was time to accept the repercussions of their deeds. As I prepared my case, I felt a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I felt like I had power over my own fate. The shades of scorn were slowly lifting, revealing a new dawn. As the divorce proceedings began, the mood in the house became more caustic. Yet, with each passing day, my panic faded, replaced by a steely resolve. Mrs. Whitmore decided to try a new strategy one evening. "Alara, dear, why don't we forget all this nasty business? You know we're family." Her comments were insincere. I met her stare unwaveringly. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Alex, who had been silently watching, scoffed. "Oh, playing the victim now? You're not as innocent as you pretend to be." I felt a wave of rage, but I kept my voice composed. "I'm not playing anything, Alex. I'm just no longer willing to be your scapegoat." As is typically the case, the subject turned to finances. "You think you can just take our son and leave? How will you support him?" Alex was skeptical. I grinned with a tiny, confident curl of my lips. "I've been supporting this family for years. I think I can manage." Mrs. Whitmore turned her gaze into a sneer. "You're nothing without us. You'll come crawling back." But their remarks no longer had force over me. I recognized my worth and knew the truth. The following day, I met with my lawyer again. She outlined the strategy clearly. "We'll expose their financial dependency on you. It will play a crucial role in the custody battle and the division of assets." I nodded, feeling vindicated. The law was on my side, and I was prepared to fight back. At home, the tension had reached a boiling point. Mrs. Whitmore's attempts to discredit me got increasingly desperate. "You think you're so smart," she sneered one evening. "But you're just a cold-hearted woman abandoning your family." I stared her directly in the eyes. I'm a woman who's finally standing up for herself." Alex leaped in, his voice full of fury. "You'll regret this. You can't survive without me." However, his threats fell on deaf ears. I was done being intimidated. As the days passed, my preparations for the court battle became more intense. I obtained financial accounts, documented their harsh remarks, and gathered evidence of their negligence. One afternoon, as I was arranging my documents, my kid approached me. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" His voice was soft and hesitant. I drew him into an embrace, feeling a flash of protectiveness. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine. We're leaving this place, and we're going to start a new, happy life, just you and me." His arms tightened around me, and I knew I'd made the correct decision. I was fighting not just for myself, but also for my son's future. The court hearing date approached, bringing with it the prospect of impending freedom. I was prepared to confront Alex and Mrs. Whitmore and put an end to their tyranny and emotional abuse. I was ready to take back my life and give my son the peace and happiness he deserved. It was time for justice, and I was determined to see it delivered. The court hearing day arrived, and I was filled with both dread and determination. I felt a sense of surrealism when I sat across from Alex and Mrs. Whitmore in court. This was the moment when everything changed. The proceedings started with frigid formality. Alex's lawyer portrayed him as a dedicated spouse and parent battling under unjust accusations. Mrs. Whitmore played the sorrowful mother-in-law who had been wronged by her ungrateful daughter-in-law. However, their performance was apparent, and their lies were flimsy. When my turn came, I spoke clearly and steadily. "I've been the only provider for this family for years. My husband's unemployment and his mother's manipulative behavior have been continual sources of stress." Alex intervened, his voice tinged with feigned hurt. "Alara, how can you say such things? I've always backed you." I turned to him, my stare steadfast. "Alex, support is more than words. It's about deeds, and your actions have only demonstrated selfishness and harshness." The judge listened closely as I presented my evidence, which included financial accounts, audio recordings of their verbal abuse, and testimony from neighbors who witnessed their behavior. The fact was undeniable. As the evidence accumulated, Alex's facade began to collapse. Mrs. Whitmore's poise shattered, and her innocence slipped away. The courtroom was quiet, the air thick with anxiety. Then came the realization that sealed their doom. My lawyer submitted photos and documentation confirming Alex's adultery and Mrs. Whitmore's clandestine affair with Mr. Harwood, a wealthy neighbor. Murmurs broke out in the courtroom as the photographs of them in compromising postures were shown. Their lie was exposed for all to see. Alex's face became ashen, his eyes wide with surprise. Mrs. Whitmore's face twisted into rage, and her hands trembled. You compromised our privacy," she yelled, her voice shrill. I glanced at her, my voice steady yet forceful. "I revealed the truth, which you both had been hiding for far too long." The court shouted for order, but the harm was already done. Their credibility was shattered, and their lies were revealed in the bright light of the courtroom. As the session concluded, the judge's conclusion was apparent. I was given full custody of our son, and a fair distribution of assets was ordered. Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were left with just their destroyed reputations. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. The years of deception and emotional assault had finally ended. I had confronted my oppressors and emerged victorious. But the finest moment was when my son raced into my arms outside the courthouse, his face beaming with relief and joy. "We did it, Mom," he exclaimed, his voice full of delight. "Yes, we did," I said, holding him close. "We're free now. This is only the beginning for us." As we walked away hand in hand, I realized this was more than simply a personal win. It was a victory for everybody who has ever been made to feel little, helpless, or unworthy. It represented a victory for truth and justice. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one full of optimism and the promise of a better future. The court verdict had an immediate and chaotic impact. The story of Alex and Mrs. Whitmore's deception spread like wildfire, ruining their reputations in our little neighborhood. They could no longer hide behind their facade of respectability. In the days following the verdict, I concentrated on rebuilding my life with my kid, but I couldn't deny the gratification of knowing Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were facing the repercussions of their decisions. One evening, as I was making dinner, I had an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Harwood, Mr. Harwood's wife, appeared, her eyes crimson from unshed tears. "Alara, I've heard about everything. I can't believe what Sylvia, Mrs. Whitmore, did," she exclaimed, her voice breaking. I invited her in and offered a cup of tea. As we sat at the kitchen table, she expressed her sadness. I trusted her as a neighbor and friend. And to think she was having an affair with my husband. Her voice trembled, so I listened and offered words of comfort. Mrs. Whitmore's actions had clearly caused far more damage than she had planned. The next day, I saw Alex in town. He was a shell of his former self, his arrogance replaced with a defeated expression. "Alara, please. Can we speak?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I paused, facing him. "What's there to talk about, Alex?" He fidgeted, unwilling to meet my gaze. I apologize for everything. I didn't understand how much I relied on you and your strength." His apologies, however late, reflected the shift in power. He had lost everything, his dignity, his home, and his family, and in that loss, he had finally admitted his own flaws. Mrs. Whitmore, however, received the greatest criticism. Her affair with Mr. Harwood had not only wrecked her reputation but also resulted in legal problems. Mrs. Harwood sought a divorce and sued her for alienation of affection. I learned of Mrs. Whitmore's dilemma from neighbors. Whispers and tales depicted a lady undone by her own acts. She had become an outsider, rejected by individuals she had previously considered friends. I saw her at the grocery store one day, hurrying through the aisles with downcast eyes. Our paths touched, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. The sight of hatred and defeat in her eyes was undeniable. "You did this to me," she said under her breath as she walked by. I watched Sylvia leave, her figure slowly fading as she hurried away, her eyes filled with resentment. I felt a strange mix of pity for her and vindication for myself. "No, Sylvia," I whispered under my breath. "You did this to yourself." The tides of justice had finally shifted. Everything they had done to me, all the lies, the manipulation, the emotional torment, had come full circle. The consequences of their actions were now irreversible. I could see them struggling, living in the aftermath of the deceit they had carefully cultivated over the years. Their false facade had shattered, and now they were forced to face the reality of what they had become. As I watched them suffer through the consequences of their own making, I felt a sense of calm satisfaction. But it wasn't just about them getting what they deserved. The real reward was in the freedom I had gained. The best form of retribution, I realized, was not in revenge, but in living a life full of peace and strength, free from the toxicity and harmful influence they had cast upon me for so long. My focus shifted back to what truly mattered, the future I was building with my son. We were free now, free from the prison they had trapped me in for all those years. I had broken free, and now, I was living the life I had always dreamed of. This wasn't just a story of revenge or victory, it was a story of liberation. It was a powerful testament to my strength and resilience. I had taken control of my destiny, broken the chains of abuse, and freed myself from the tyranny of their manipulation. As I looked ahead, I knew that the future was bright, and the best was yet to come. I was no longer a prisoner to their cruelty. I was free, and the world was mine to conquer. I discovered my family only valued my money, not me. I cut them off, reclaimed my life, and found freedom in choosing myself over their manipulation. My name is Emma, and until a few nights ago, I believed that my family loved me. It began with a simple notification. My aunt had given me a video. I was in the midst of preparing dinner when my phone rang. I wiped my hands on a towel, grabbed my phone, and unintentionally tapped the message. At first, I assumed she sent me something random, a family movie, or an old film she found amusing. But then I heard my mom's voice. Emma should be grateful. She'd be nothing without us. My stomach sank. The video looked unsteady, as if someone had laid their phone down without realizing it was recording, but the voices were perfectly audible. A pathetic failure? That's what Emma is, my father said with a laugh. But at least she's good for something, paying our bills. Laughter? I held my phone more tightly. If Emma ever stopped sending money, my aunt, who had just sent this, said with a smirk, we'd just guilt her into it. She's too soft to say no. My entire body became numb. Emma. This is my name. They weren't discussing a hypothetical person. They were not fooling around. They were talking about me. I had been assisting them for years, paying their rent, covering their debts, and spending my own funds to ensure they never struggled in the same manner I did. And is this what they truly thought of me? I was still stuck, my thumb hanging over the screen, when the video abruptly disappeared. This message has been unsent. I gazed at the notification. My aunt realized her error. She must have panicked and deleted the video, assuming I hadn't noticed. I should have challenged her. Should have called her out. I should have told them I knew everything. But instead, I put down my phone and pretended I hadn't seen it. And that's when I determined I wouldn't react. Not yet. I had a plan. I sat for what seemed like hours, staring at my phone. The words echoed in my thoughts. Emma should be grateful. A pathetic failure. She's too soft to say no. I wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. Perhaps they were joking. Perhaps I was missing some context. But deep inside I knew better. I knew the truth. They intended every word. And the worst part. They were not wrong about one thing, I was too soft to say no. How many times had they guilted me into assisting them? How many times have I put my own life on hold to ensure they got what they required? My father's temporary financial difficulties developed into me paying rent for years. My brother's tuition, he didn't even complete college. My mother's incessant emergencies, always neatly timed when I had just been paid. And I had done everything without hesitation. Because that's what families are meant to do, right? I had spent years convincing myself that I was doing the correct thing. They appreciated me. They said they loved me. But that one video shattered every fantasy I had left. And now they believed they had gotten away with it. My aunt had unsent the message, perhaps breathing a sigh of relief that I hadn't noticed it. Perhaps she even reassured everyone. Don't worry, Emma didn't watch it. They assumed I was still in the dark. That was my advantage. I could have texted her right there. Could have confronted her. I told her I had seen everything. But what would that accomplish? They'd simply deny it. Make excuses. Twist the circumstances so that I feel guilty. I'd let them assume I was still their dutiful little financial account, for the time being. The next payment was due in a few days. And this time, things would be different. The next morning, I awoke to my normal routine, but everything felt different. The sun still shone through my drapes. My coffee brewed just as it usually did. But there was this awareness in the back of my mind, as if I was observing my life from a new perspective. My phone vibrated. A message from my mother. Mom. Morning, sweetie, just checking in. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the message. It was usual, too normal. She never texted me simply to check in. There was always a cause, and a request was hidden somewhere. And just a few minutes later. Mom. Oh, by the way, the rent is due soon. Can you send it by Friday? There it was. The same cycle. The same motif. But this time, I was not going to play along. I typed a response with my fingertips hovering over the keyboard. My typical response would be something like of course, or no issue. Maybe I'd even apologize for taking so long, just so they didn't feel inconvenienced. Not this time. I deleted everything and simply responded, I can't this month. Before sending the message, I glanced at it for a few seconds. I set down my phone and waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Buzz. Mom. What do you mean, you can't? I could see the displeasure on the television. I'd never said no before. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took a sip of my coffee, leaving her to stew in her bewilderment. A couple more messages arrived. Mom. Emma, this is serious? We are counting on you. You know we don't have any other options right now. Another buzz. This time it's from my aunt. Aunt. Hello, honey. Your mother is freaking out. Is everything okay? I nearly laughed. Is everything okay? Sure. Everything was excellent. I had spent years paying for their life, and when I hinted at stopping, they panicked. They never asked me if I was all right, if I needed assistance. It never was about me. It had never been. I took a deep breath and responded. Me. I've had some unexpected bills this month. I cannot send anything. Sorry. That was it. There's no explanation, no apologies. And then I waited. What happened next revealed all I needed to know. The silence was terrible. For the first time in years, I had declined. They didn't know how to manage it. I stared at my phone, watching the 3 small dots appear and disappear. Over and over. My mom was typing. Stopping. Typing again. I envisioned her sitting there, fuming, trying to figure out the best way to persuade me to change my decision. Finally, her response got through. Mom. Emma, what do you mean by unexpected expenses? Is there anything more essential than your family? There it was. Guilt trip. They had always employed the same technique. I didn't respond. I simply let the message sit there. Less than 1 minute later. Mom. You know your brother doesn't have a way to pay his rent. If he's kicked out, that's on you. Ah. The brother card. Classic. Then another message. Mom. Emma, we raised you. We cared for you when you had nothing. Is this how you're repaying us? I gritted my jaw and tightened my fingers around my phone. When I had nothing? They never cared for me. I put myself through school. I worked 3 jobs to get out of that house. And as soon as I got money, they hung on to me like leeches, sucking me dry. They grabbed everything, so I had nothing. My phone vibrated again. Aunt. Emma, dear, do not do this. We are family. Your mother is merely upset. You know how she gets. Simply send the rent, and everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Who is it fine for? I put down my phone, my heart hammering. I needed a second to breathe and ponder. I strolled to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took a slow sip while looking at the clock on the wall. I could feel something shifting within me. For years, I had been afraid of this moment. I was afraid that if I stopped paying, they would detest me. They would cut me off. They would turn their back on me. But now I know the truth. They've never loved me. They adored what I could offer them. And the moment that ceased, they would reveal who they were. Buzz. I strolled back to my phone and picked it up with firm hands. This time, the communication came from my father. Dad. Emma, I'm not sure what has gotten into you, but this is unacceptable. You are being selfish. This family needs you, and you're behaving like an entitled brat. Grow up and do the right thing. There it was. The final mask slips. No more faking kindness. No more pretending to care, just demands. I stared at the words, my heart racing in my ears. Then another notification came up. A voice message. From my aunt. My hands trembled as I paused, my thumb lingering above the play button. Something told me this would change everything. I hesitated for a long time, staring at the small play button on the screen. A voice message. From Aunt D. My heart beat against my ribcage. She was not the type to send voice messages. If she had something to say, she usually sugar-coated it in text, passive-aggressive with just enough phony sweetness to make me feel bad. But this was different. Slowly, I pressed play. Her voice came through, harsh and impatient. Aunt. Listen, Emma. I'm not sure what game you're playing, but this isn't humorous. Your mother is losing her sanity. Your father is upset. And honestly, I do not blame them. You have always been a little ungrateful. But this is quite selfish. I felt my gut clench, but I forced myself to continue listening. Aunt. You have a wonderful job, right? You earn more than any of us. You don't even need the money. Meanwhile, your family is struggling. So what? Did you just wake up one day and realize you don't care? A bitter laugh. You owe them, Emma. After all they've done for you. Following all the sacrifices they made. They gave you life. Now you're going to walk away? Pretend they do not exist. What kind of a daughter would do that? She breathed forcefully, and for a moment I believed she was finished. But then? Aunt. You know what? Her tone altered, becoming colder now. If you truly want to be that kind of person, that's fine. But do not expect them to forgive you. Don't expect to come crawling back once you discover how much you rely on them. Because when you pass this line, there's no going back. The message terminated. Silence. I let the words sink, my thumb hovering over the replay button. My ears rang, and my hands were numb. I should have been afraid. I should have panicked. I should have been hurrying to make things right, to correct this, to apologize. But instead, I felt relaxed. More than that, I felt free. Because she'd just verified everything. They did not love me. They did not respect me. They did not even recognize me as a person. They regarded me as nothing more than a financial account. A moving, breathing ATM. And the instant I stopped distributing money, I was nothing. And if that was the case, perhaps it was time to become nothing to them. Buzz. Another communication from my mom. Mom. This is your last opportunity, Emma. Send the rent. I stared at the message for a very long time. Then, without hesitation, I blocked her. I blocked my father, I blocked my aunt. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I was free. Or so I thought. Because the next day, my brother arrived at my home. The knock at my door sent shivers down my spine. It was early. It's too early. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon at this early hour, when most people were still sleeping. For a second, I considered ignoring it. Perhaps it was a neighbor. Perhaps there was a parcel. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. Then, another knock. This time, it was louder. Become more insistent. I took a slow breath, braced myself and walked to the door. My fingers paused on the handle, and my heart pounded in my chest. And then I opened it. There he was. My brother. His face contorted between fury and desperation, and his clothes wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. God's eyes. Bloodshot. Wild. Are you serious, Emma? His voice was as cutting as a sword shoved against my skin. What the hell is wrong with you? I blinked and kept my expression neutral. Good morning to you too. He scoffed and ran his hand through his already untidy hair. Don't do that. Don't act like this isn't a big deal. You blocked everyone. Mom is freaking out. Dad's losing his mind. You're just... What? Cutting us off? Pretending we don't exist? I crossed my arms and leaned against the door frame. I don't know, Jason. Maybe I just got tired of being treated like a piggy bank. His jaw clenched. Oh my God. Not this again, not this again. I gave out a sour laugh. Jason, I've been paying your rent for years. I've covered your bills, your food, even your stupid gym membership. And the one time I say no? The one time I set a boundary? Mom calls me a selfish brat, Dad says I'm unacceptable, and you show up at my door like I committed a crime. His lips parted as if he were going to argue, but no words emerged. So I continued going. And don't even try to pretend you care about me. I cocked my head, my voice cold. I saw the video. His face turned pallid. For the first time, genuine dread flashed across his eyes. What video? I smiled, but it was not a pleasant one. You know exactly what video. Jason shifted on his feet, looked aside as his hands balled into fists. Look, it wasn't serious, okay? We were just joking. You're being dramatic. Joking? My voice was soft, yet as sharp as glass. You all sat around laughing, calling me a pathetic failure. Saying I should be grateful for the chance to pay your bills. Do you know what that feels like, Jason? To hear your own family talk about you like that? He breathed sharply and rubbed his face. Emma, come on. No. I cut him off. You come on. You want money? Get a job. You want someone to take care of you? Find someone else. Because I'm done. Silence. He just stood there and stared at me. And for a little moment, I saw something spark across his face. Something rough. However, it was gone just as suddenly. You don't mean that, he grumbled. I retained his stare. Yes, I do. Another lapse in stillness. Then his expression darkened. His mouth curled into something unpleasant. Fine, he snapped. You want to be a selfish bitch? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize you have no one left. With that, he turned to walk away. I stood there, watching him leave. My chest was tense, yet my back was straight, because he was incorrect. I did have someone leave. I had myself. But, as I closed the door, letting out a trembling breath, my phone vibrated. I looked at the screen, and the familiar name flashed. It was my mom. But I was not going to pick up. Not this time. I had been at her mercy for so long. Her demands, her guilt trips, the way she used my own sense of duty against me, manipulating me into giving up all I had in order to keep her from breaking apart. Not anymore. I went away with the phone facing down. The truth was, I was done. I'm done with being a continual source of money. I'm tired of being the safety net that kept my family afloat when they couldn't be bothered to forge their own path in life. I'm done with lies and manipulation. They never asked me how I was doing. Never considered the toll it had on me to continually take up the slack. I had been carrying their weight for years, my mother's, my father's, and my brother's. All of them acting as if I owed them something, as if my life was just one long, endless repayment for everything they had done for me. But nobody had ever asked what I needed. Nobody had ever cared for me. And now, I was taking control. But my decision was not unnoticed. The following morning, when I sat in my living room, the silence felt oppressive. The weight of my decision was beginning to sink in. But there were no regrets. No second guessing. I had made the correct decision. Then, my doorbell rang. I was not surprised. It was Jason. I could tell by the way he knocked, demanding and impatient. This was the last person I expected to show up. But it's not surprising at all. I slowly opened the door, keeping my expression neutral. Emma, he began, his usual arrogant tone gone, replaced by something almost pleading. You need to listen to me. I did not welcome him in. I stood at the doorway, arms crossed. I don't need to listen to anything you have to say, Jason. He blinked, taken aback. No, you don't understand. His tone softened, almost desperate. Mom's freaking out. Dad's calling me, asking what's going on. They don't know how to fix this? You've cut us all off. You can't just leave us hanging like this. I scoffed and leaned against the doorframe. Oh, I'm sorry, did you think I was just going to keep enabling you? Keep paying your rent, your bills, and pretending everything was fine? No, Jason, I'm done. I don't care how much you or mom or dad beg. I'm done playing the role of the family ATM. His eyes flared with rage. You're acting like we've never done anything for you. Like we're all just users, right? I did not flinch. Oh, believe me, I know exactly what I've been to you all. I've been a cash machine. A free ride. And I'm tired of it. Jason's face twisted. You can't just leave us hanging like this. You owe us, Emma. The words stung. But they did not shatter me. They only made me more determined. I owe you, I said, my voice firm. I've given you everything. I paid for your rent, your groceries, your bills, while you just sat there and watched me do it. And you want to talk about owing? His fist clenched at his side. You'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off. I couldn't help laughing. No, Jason. You'll regret it. Because I'm not the one who needs you anymore. Without waiting for his reaction, I slammed the door in his face. It felt nice. But I sensed that the drama was far from ended. Later that night, my phone vibrated again. I almost did not want to check it, but curiosity gnawed at me. It was from my father. Dad. Emma, we raised you. Do not assume you can simply walk away from everything we've done for you. You're making an enormous mistake. Come back. We'll chat about it. We will fix this. I could almost sense desperation in his words. I sat there for a time, phone still in hand. I could have ignored it. I may also have blocked him. But I had a better idea. I wasn't simply going to block them. I was going to make them pay for every single lie, every single time they took me for granted. And it was going to start now. I stood up, approached my desk, and opened my laptop. It was time to deliver a message they would never forget. So I started typing. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wasn't going to sit back and let them reintegrate into my life as if nothing had happened. I was done being the punching bag. This time, I was in control. I thought about everything I had done for them. All of the payments I'd made, the bailouts. I swallowed my pride and helped them, even though I knew I was the one being drained. No more. Now was their turn to feel the consequences of their conduct. I opened my email and began typing. First, I gathered all of the financial records. Every payment I'd ever made on their invoices. Each bank transfer. Every check I'd sent over the years to compensate for their faults. It was time to remind them of the things they had taken from me. I added a remark to the top of the email. Here's a detailed summary of everything I've done for you over the years. I'm done being your lifeline. I'll no longer be your ATM, and I'll no longer let you make me feel guilty for choosing myself. Consider this my final invoice. You don't owe me anything anymore, but you will owe yourself the realization of how much I've sacrificed, all because I thought family was supposed to help each other, not drain each other. Then I added the receipts, bills, and payments I'd sent. But it was not the end. Definitely not. I signed on to the family group chat, which used to keep me on edge with their complaints and demands. I browsed through the messages, reading the ones where they said they needed me and guilted me into assisting them. Then I tried something I hadn't done in years. I responded. You all talk a lot about what you've done for me, but you've forgotten how much I've given up for you. And here's the reality check. You never needed me. You just used me. I'm done. This is my last message. Don't ever contact me again. I sent it. The silence that followed was nearly lovely. I slumped back in my chair, feeling the weight of the decision wash over me. For once, there were no more phone calls. No more guilt trips. No more pretending they had any authority over me. They might continue their manipulations, lies, and empty promises. I was free. But just when I thought it was finished, I got one last message. From Jason. You're making a mistake, Emma. You'll regret this. Family sticks together. I smiled to myself. I knew he was only attempting to get under my skin, but this time, it didn't work. Because I didn't need them. I had a life. My freedom. And it was enough. It wasn't the dramatic explosion I had envisioned. It wasn't a great clash. But in its own way, this was much better. I had assumed command without anyone seeing it coming. And the best part. They lost their control over me. As I turned off my phone for the night, a sensation of calm washed over me. I did not have to play their game. I didn't have to continue sacrificing myself for those who didn't value me. It wasn't the revenge I expected. It was quieter. Be more deliberate. And far more satisfying. Now I could finally breathe. And the best part, I could finally live for myself, and that, in the end, was the sweetest victory. Reflection. Wow, what a ride that was, right? It's incredible to think of how much Emma had to endure for so long. But in the end, she gained control of her life. I admire how she refused to let her family's conflict and guilt bring her down. Instead of a massive conflict, she simply cut them off quietly, but with force. Making a scene is not always the best way to exact revenge. It's about reclaiming your life and showing that you're no longer a doormat. But here's the thing, not everyone would have handled it that way. Some could argue that she should have pushed for the relationship. Maybe even give them a second opportunity. Others may believe she made the correct decision by removing them entirely. So what are your thoughts? Do you agree with Emma's decision? Was her silent vengeance satisfying, or overly harsh? Please share your ideas in the comments below. I would love to know what you think. My girlfriend cheated with her boss, and our friends knew. I walked away. She tried to ruin me, but karma struck back. They lost everything. This morning, my phone exploded with 32 missed calls. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The indicators were there, spread like breadcrumbs during the final months of our relationship. But after 3 years with someone, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. At least, that's what I was telling myself. It began with tiny things. Allison started working late more frequently, which is not uncommon during busy seasons. But then came the new perfume I didn't recognize, clothes I'd never seen before appearing in our wardrobe, and her phone suddenly becoming this hallowed object that was always within arm's reach. I've never been the jealous kind, but something felt strange. When I attempted to hug her from behind while she was texting, she would move away. How she'd walk out to accept calls while stating they were work-related. The frequent girls' nights with folks whose names I had never heard before. Last Tuesday, as I was folding clothes, her phone lit up on the coffee table. A message preview from someone named Jay appeared. I miss you already. Last night, the rest was cut off, but my stomach sank. I didn't want to be the person who snoops through his girlfriend's phone, but the universe appeared to be telling me to wake up. When she arrived home that night, I decided to be direct. She was in the kitchen, preparing a smoothie as if nothing were wrong. The sound of the blender filled our flat as I leaned against the doorframe to watch her. "Who's Jay?" I inquired as she finally switched it off. Her posture changed instantly. Her shoulders stiffened, but then she did something unexpected. She smiled. She smiled coldly and almost triumphantly, rather than her customary warmth. "Wondering when you'd finally catch on, Michael," she remarked, taking a sip from her glass. "Jay's my boss, and yes, I've been sleeping with him for the past 2 months." The nonchalant manner in which she said it felt like a slap. No guilt, no humiliation, only pride. "I needed a real man," she added, smirking. "Someone who knows what he wants and goes for it. Not someone who spends his weekends playing video games with Jacob and watching stupid movies." I stood there, pondering her words. After 3 years together, is this how she truly saw me? Through the shock, I felt something else rise. Not rage, but an odd sense of clarity. "Does Chloe know?" I inquired, remembering our mutual buddy who had introduced us. "Oh, she's known for weeks," Allison said, laughing. "Most of our friends know. They understand. Jay can actually provide a future, not just dreams and excuses." That stung harder than the cheating admission. These folks with whom we'd shared birthdays, holidays, and many dinners had all been watching this, most likely laughing behind my back. I took out my phone and entered the group chat with Jacob and Chloe. "Is that true? Did you all know?" Jacob's response arrived swiftly. "Bro, you're fantastic, but Allison deserves someone more experienced. Don't take this personally." Chloe joined in. "We did not mean to hurt you, but perhaps this is the wake-up call you need." I looked up from my phone to see Allison observing me with the same smirk on her lips. She was hoping for an explosion, drama, and a scene she could tell everyone about later. Poor, immature Michael is losing his calm. Instead, I smiled, a genuine smile that appeared to catch her off guard. Without saying anything, I walked to our bedroom, dug out my go bag, which I normally keep prepared for weekend getaways, and grabbed my laptop and keys. Allison was staring at me as I walked back through the kitchen, her smirk weakening slightly. "Where are you going?" she questioned. "Out," I answered simply. "And Allison, keep the apartment. I'm sure Jay can help with the rent." I heard her begin to say something as I closed the door behind me, but I didn't pause to listen. My phone was already vibrating with texts, most likely from our so-called pals attempting to justify themselves. As I drove away, I turned off my phone and felt something unexpected. Relief. Sometimes losing everything reveals what you never had in the first place. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who responded to my previous post. I never anticipated it to blow up like that. A lot has happened in the last week, and I'm still absorbing it. I've been staying in a modest motel on the outskirts of town. It's not the most glamorous place, but it's clean, and the owner, an older man named Pete, appears to be a nice guy. He even reduced the weekly rent by $20 after hearing my story. I turned on my phone after 2 days of silence, 32 missed calls and 47 text messages. The majority were from Allison, some from Jacob and Chloe, and a few from numbers I didn't recognize. What drew my attention, however, was the social media notification storm. Allison had been busy, very busy. Her Instagram story depicted a picture that I scarcely recognized. Apparently, I was a controlling, jealous boyfriend who watched her every movement. According to her posts, I emotionally tortured her for years, cut her off from friends, and threw a violent tantrum when she finally stood up for herself. Each post received hundreds of sympathetic responses, including some from people I thought were friends. What about the crown jewel? In a sad video, she claimed I had financially mistreated her by forcing her to divide all of our bills 50-50 while I hoarded my money. Rich, considering she earned more than I did and insisted on the arrangement herself. Then came a text from Gemma, a coworker I'd known for years. "Hey, you might want to check your email. Something's going around the office about you." Sure enough, there was a company-wide email about creating a safe workplace environment, with a thinly veiled reference to recent troubling activities by specific workers. There were no names stated, but the timing was hardly subtle. I should have become angry. Perhaps I should have pushed back and shared my side of the story. Instead, I was curious. How far would she go? It turns out to be quite far. Yesterday, I went to our local coffee shop, which I assumed would be safe because Allison despised their coffee. Wrong. The barista, who had usually been kind, gave me a look as if I had attached to her shoe. Later, I discovered Allison had become a regular, telling her survival story with everyone who would listen. But this is where things become interesting. While retrieving some things from storage, I ran upon Juliana, Allison's alleged best friend. She appeared uneasy, peering around as if she was worried about being spotted chatting to me. "You need to be careful," she said quietly. "Jay isn't just her boss. His wife, She's connected. Like, really connected. And Allison's been telling her you're unstable. Dangerous, even. Why are you telling me this? Juliana's gaze flashed around again. Because this isn't the first time. Before you, there was another guy at work. Allison and Jay. They did the same thing to him. He ended up leaving town. That talk altered everything. I spent the night researching legal records, social media, whatever I could discover. It turns out the preceding man existed. Mark something. Allison disappeared totally from social media around the time she started at the company. This morning, I received a call from our landlord. Allison attempted to remove my name from the lease, alleging I had abandoned the property. When it didn't work, she informed him that I had been threatening her. He called to warn me. It turned out his sister had gone through something similar years before. But here's the real kicker. During all of this, I received a message request on Instagram from an account I did not recognize. The profile image was of a woman in her 40s, elegantly dressed and wearing costly jewelry. The message was simple: I believe we should discuss my husband and your girlfriend. Coffee tomorrow. It was signed by Mrs. J. I'm meeting her in an hour. Something tells me Allison's true guy story is going to get a lot more complicated. The weird thing is, watching Allison create this sophisticated web of lies, and seeing our friends take sides based solely on her word, is very liberating. Every hateful message, every phony tear, and every fabricated narrative only reinforces what I already knew. I am not losing anything worth keeping. Update 2, sorry for the delayed update, the last 2 weeks have been crazy. What about the coffee meetup with Mrs. J? Game changer. It turns out that she's been accumulating evidence for months, not only about Allison and her husband, but about a larger pattern of behavior inside the corporation. Remember how Juliana mentioned the person who had left town? He was not the first. Mrs. J has documented at least 3 similar incidents in the previous 5 years, with young employees becoming connected with her husband and then assisting in the removal of anyone who could expose them. What is the difference this time? Mrs. J had finished playing quietly. She had texts, emails, expense records, and security footage from the workplace parking garage. But she wanted one more thing: public visibility. This is where the yearly corporate party came in. I didn't intend to attend, why would I? Mrs. J had other ideas. Sometimes, she reminded me, the best retribution is simply letting people show their true colors. The party was held at a luxury downtown hotel. I arrived late and dressed nicer than I ever had on these occasions. What were the glances I got when I stepped in? Priceless. Allison almost dropped her drink. Jay's face changed from red to white so quickly that I thought he'd pass out. But here's the best part: I didn't have to do anything. Chloe approached first, obviously tipsy. You've got some nerve showing up here, she mumbled, loud enough for adjacent groups to hear. After everything you put Allison through. I just smiled. Everything I put her through? That's interesting. Tell me more. That was when Gemma walked in. Remember her? My coworker? She'd been quietly gathering her own evidence, screenshots of Allison talking about her escapades in business chat groups, recordings of her discussing how to spin the narrative with Jay. Actually, Gemma said, I think we'd all like to hear the real story. The following hour was like watching dominoes fall. Mrs. J arrived precisely on time, tablet in hand. The projector mistakenly began presenting a slideshow of embarrassing messages and photographs. Allison's increasingly desperate attempts to preserve control of her narrative. Jacob, however, put on the real show. Good old bros come before hoes, except when the hoe can help my career. Jacob. He'd been photographing everything with his phone, intending to present it to Jay later to prove his loyalty or something. Instead, he captured Allison's entire tantrum. You think you're so clever, she was screaming at me. You and that bitter old woman, trying to ruin everything I've built. Jay loves me. We're going to have a life together. Mrs. J chose to share the cherry on top. Divorce paperwork, already filed. It turned out that Jay had promised Allison the same future that he had promised the other employees. Same script, but different actress. What is the best part? Throughout this, I rarely spoke. I just watched years of manipulation and falsehoods unravel in real time. Juliana, who had been quiet throughout the evening, eventually spoke up. I helped her, she said, addressing the now quiet chamber. I helped her destroy that other guy's reputation. I can't do it again. By midnight, the party had effectively ended. Allison stormed out, mascara running down her face. Jay was confined in his office with HR. What about those friends who were so willing to trust her stories? They couldn't look me in the eyes as I left. Mrs. J grabbed my arm. Thank you, she said, for being the one who didn't run. I drove home to my motel room, feeling surprisingly calm. Pete was still awake, watching late-night television in the office. He took one look at my face and smiled. Good night? You could say that? This morning, my phone blew up again, this time in a different tone. Apologies, explanations. People claim they never truly trusted Allison's stories. I even received a note from Mark, the person who left town. Apparently, he has been following everything via mutual ties. Sometimes, karma doesn't require our assistance, it only requires an audience. Final update. This is it, the final chapter of this drama, and believe me, it has been an incredible ride. You may want to get some popcorn for this one. First and foremost, the fallout from the workplace party was more severe than anyone had anticipated. Within 48 hours, Jay and Allison were asked to quit. But that was only the beginning. Remember the documents Mrs. J had collected? It turns out there was more, much more. Jay had fabricated all of his expense reports to disguise his business dinners with Allison. Every correspondence in which they planned against fellow colleagues. Each falsified performance review. She gave it all to the board of directors. The company's legal team worked extremely quickly. They were more concerned with the trend of workplace harassment and financial malfeasance than with the affairs themselves. Both Jay and Allison are currently facing civil litigation. But this is where things become interesting. Remember Mark, the guy who skipped town? He came back. And he brought receipts. Literally and figuratively. It turns out he documented everything before he left, including the smear campaign Allison and Jay launched against him. He didn't know what to do with it all, until now. Mrs. J introduced him to her lawyer. 3 days later, he brought his own complaint. Then something lovely occurred. Other former employees began coming forward, each with their own story and evidence. What began as a single scandal suddenly became an avalanche. Allison attempted to get ahead of it. She uploaded an emotional video in which she claimed to be the true victim, having been duped by Jay and is now being persecuted. That's when Juliana developed a spine. She shared images of their private chats, in which Allison boasted about her escapades and plotted to harm people's reputations. The ones in which she insulted her victims. Allison visited my motel last week. Pete, the owner, called me at work. That girl you told me about? She's making a scene in the parking lot. I took my time driving home. I found her sitting on the hood of my car, mascara streaked and clutching a manila envelope. I have dirt on everyone, she stated, attempting to sound scary despite her wavering voice. If you don't help me stop this, I'll release it all. I just chuckled. Go ahead. Burn every bridge you have left. See how that works out. She flung the envelope at me. Inside were images, screenshots, and private messages, which she had accumulated over years of influencing others. Her insurance policy. I photographed every single page while she watched. Then I handed it back to her. Release whatever you want. But first, look at where your previous schemes got you. What about folks like Allison? They cannot stand when their weapons are used against them. She ripped up the envelope right there in the parking lot, shouting about how we'd all regret it. Was that a tantrum? Someone recorded it. Within a few hours, it had spread over social media. The ultimate blow occurred yesterday. Mrs. J's divorce was final, and, guess what? She received everything. The house. The autos. Most of their assets. Jay's golden parachute from his company? Gone to pay legal fees. What's his reputation? Destroyed? What are his future professional prospects? Let's just say, Google is no longer his friend. How about Allison? According to what I've heard, she's returning to live with her parents in another state. Her social media has gone dark. Those that sided with her? They are dealing with their own fallout. It turns out that backing the wrong horse has consequences. Jacob attempted to apologize yesterday. I sent him a long note on how he could have been a better friend. I simply responded with a screenshot of his previous messages supporting Allison. He stopped me. Coward. Chloe is also conducting damage control. She is concerned that the screenshots Allison saved may have an impact on her own career. I almost feel bad. Almost. Me? I just signed a lease for a new apartment. I got a promotion at work. It's funny how removing poisonous people improves things. And yes, I'm seeing someone new. Taking it slowly. Doing things correctly, plotting and scheming are not the best ways to exact revenge. It's living well while allowing people to harm themselves, but I will not lie. It's been really pleasant to watch everything burn. This will be my final update. Thank you for joining along for the ride, Reddit. Remember, Karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes you just have to step aside and let folks show their true colors. My parents have chased away every boyfriend I have ever had. How can I prevent this from ruining my relationship with my current boyfriend? Original, February 13, 2025. I was very shy during high school and didn't leave my house unless I had to, so as a result I didn't get a boyfriend until my freshman year of college. After 7 months of dating my first ever boyfriend, I brought him to my parents' house for dinner, just so they could meet him. I had to step away for roughly 10 minutes to help my older sister with her baby, and when I came back, my BF, then 20 male, and my dad, old, were having a full-blown fistfight. We managed to stop them and my BF stormed off without saying anything, while my dad insisted my BF was incredibly rude and disrespectful to him and my mother and that a guy like that was no good for me, because he'd just end up doing the same thing to me. I was shocked that my BF could do such a thing because he had always been extremely sweet and I've never met or heard of anyone not liking him, but when I called him and told him what my dad had said about what happened, all he did was laugh and say I can believe whatever I want, before blocking me on everything. I was deeply disturbed by this, but my mom and sister insisted that he had just shown his true colors, and said my dad saved me from an abuser. I reluctantly accepted this, but something about it felt really off. I met my second boyfriend several months later, during my sophomore year. Part of me still felt my parents were part of the problem with my last BF, so I managed to get him to wait an entire year before introducing him to my parents. From the moment she laid eyes on him, every word my mom spoke to him was dripping with fake friendliness and subtle jabs implying she did not approve of him, which made him visibly uncomfortable. While we were eating dinner, she began asking me why I decided to date my BF, and asked about other guys and why they didn't work out. Some of the guys she asked about were completely made up. At this point it was clear what they were trying to do, and I silently vowed to talk to my boyfriend and tell him how my parents were trying to sabotage me. Unfortunately, it didn't get that far, as my dad chipped in and demanded to know how a boy, who couldn't support himself financially, was ever going to support his daughter. Mind you, we were both juniors in college at this point, and both of us were working part-time jobs. So this question was really insane. He responded by saying he'd already decided he wanted nothing to do with this family and was planning to break up with me when he got home, but he's just going to leave now. Within minutes, he was gone and I was blocked. Again. My parents insisted they did nothing wrong and just wanted to test his confidence as any parents would, but I pointed out that this was the second boyfriend they chased away, and they didn't do anything to scare off my older sister's husband. I went low contact with them after that, but fast forwarding a little bit, I eventually allowed them to gaslight me into introducing them to my third boyfriend, whom I had met towards the end of my senior year, and basically the same thing happened. I had made it through college unable to find a long-term BF, purely because of my parents. I did meet my current boyfriend, 28 male, 2 years ago, and I have managed to avoid introducing him to my family thus far. If he ever brought it up, I would always have a ready-made excuse prepared to explain why it wasn't possible, which has been pretty easy because he usually only asks about them when planning for major holidays. I have fallen madly in love with him and hope to start a family with him one day, but he recently told me that he can't even allow me to move in with him until he's had a chance to meet my family. I do not know what to do, as I know my parents will make it their mission to break us up if they meet him, but based on his insistence on meeting them, I realize I can't put this off any longer. Usually, relationships end because of something one person in the relationship says or does, and it's incredibly unfair that I always end up single because of things I cannot control. I want to tell my BF about my parents and insist that meeting them is a bad idea, but I've listened in on some of his conversations with his friends, and the general consensus among them seems to be that a girl with a super dysfunctional family is a massive red flag, and an indicator of what their married life would be like. So I come here asking, how do I approach the problem that is my parents without risking losing the longest relationship I've ever had? If my parents end up being the cause of yet another breakup, I just don't know what I'll do. I just don't know. Edit. Wow, I made this post about an hour before going to bed, but woke up to quite a few comments here. Thank you so much to everyone who has helped me realize what I need to do. I've read through all of the comments and saw some recurring questions come up that I wanted to address. I am not fully in contact with my parents primarily because they helped me a lot financially during college and when I first graduated and was looking for a job. When I went low contact with them, they constantly yelled at me for being ungrateful and said family does not turn on each other over minor disagreements involving boys. It sounds ridiculous when I type it here, but after months of this treatment, when I found myself faced with the decision to either tell them I forgive them so they'll pay for my dorm room, or refuse to forgive them and have to move back home, I ended up caving. Why didn't I stand up for my past BFs when I saw them being verbally abused? I don't know. I've never been allowed to talk back to my parents, so the thought of calling them out while we have company over is not something I realized I could do, I guess. My arguments with them after they ran off BF2 and 3 were the only times I've ever come into full conflict with them in my entire life. I will be going to my boyfriend's house today after work, and will tell him everything. I am terrified he will still want to meet them, just thinking about it has me shaking at my desk. But you all are right. He has a right to know and make his own decision. Edit 2. I told him, and even showed him this post. To make a long story short, he still would like to meet them but thanked me for telling him, as he always figured something was seriously wrong. My parents host dinners for our family every Sunday, and we will be attending this one. I suppose I'll make a new post with an update afterwards. Top comments. Comment 1. You stop bringing anyone you like around them. Period. Tell your boyfriend why. They get weird and run anyone you date off with their nonsense and you'd rather just avoid them altogether. My boyfriend knows all about my dysfunctional family and abusive upbringing. It didn't run him off. If anything, it brought us closer as he empathized. ETA. We just celebrated 6 years together. The right partner won't hold your family against you. You couldn't choose them, after all. Comment 2. If your plan is to stay with him in the long run, you have 2 options. 1. Come clean about why you don't want them to meet and explain exactly why you're scared of them meeting, or 2. Cut off your parents entirely and tell your boyfriend you cut them off. Ideally, either way you end up telling him why you chose what you chose. Good relationships take communication, and if your boyfriend doesn't know why he's being kept away from your family, that most likely will be the reason you break up. Update, February 18, 2025, 5 days from original update. I meant to make this update a lot sooner, but since my last post a lot has happened. I truly appreciate all the comments I received calling me out for hiding my parents being insane from my BF and encouraging me to be honest with him. My boyfriend is pretty involved now, so I guess I should give him a fake name. I will call him Ethan. I sat Ethan down and told him about my parents and how they ran off my previous boyfriends, before showing him my original post as many recommended. Fortunately, he did not seem to care that I hadn't told him, but he did agree with many commenters that my parents were more than just insane. They were outright abusive. Although he understood how I felt, he still said he would like to meet them, both to see it for himself, but also because he felt there was an underlying reason for their behavior. My parents have dinner for the family every Sunday, which I have been attending on the weeks that I'm not hanging out with Ethan that day, so we agreed that he would come to the next one. When Sunday came and we arrived at my parents' house, my anxiety was through the roof. Ethan had agreed to leave with me the moment things started to get out of hand, but with my parents that could have easily been as soon as we walked through the front door. My parents were surprisingly very nice, though. My dad actually seemed excited to see Ethan, and my mom fawned over her daughter bringing home such a handsome, confident-looking man. I couldn't understand what was happening. Ethan even shot me a look a couple times, as if to silently ask if he was missing something, because my parents were actually lovely. I want to provide a play-by-play of the entire night, but the post would just be too long. The point is, my parents had done a complete 180 from their previous behavior, and it made me look and feel crazy for trying to warn Ethan about them ahead of time. During dinner, my mom said she was so happy to see her daughter had finally found someone who wasn't judgmental and was willing to give me a chance because of the person I am today, because the past doesn't matter. My heart dropped. What was she talking about? Ethan said he does not know about anything in my past that may be cause of concern, and my parents exchanged a concerned look, as if it was rehearsed. My dad asked him why he thinks my previous relationships failed, and he said that he was under the impression they got scared away after meeting my parents. My mother looked at me with disappointment on her face and said, "Oh P, is that really what you told him?" I was at a loss for words, but Ethan was not. He said that it's pretty clear they are trying to plant seeds of doubt in him about our relationship, but he is not interested, as he knows me well enough to know my character and that even if there was something serious in my past, parents who loved and supported me or even just wanted grandchildren would keep it a secret to avoid ruining my relationship. My dad said he already has 2 grandchildren, and motioned towards my sister, who did not have her kids with her that evening. Ethan said my dad must have been very supportive of my sister for her to be able to start a family while he tries to run off any guy I bring home, and my dad's response was very casual, but extremely shocking. He said, "Of course, she's actually mine." Everyone was quiet for a few moments, until Ethan spoke up and said that now all of the abuse they've only put me through is starting to make sense. My mom said he's spouting nonsense, and that I have not been abused in any way. She then looked at me and admitted her marriage had a rocky start, but both her and my father have moved past that. I was too busy replaying my entire life in my head to say anything. The previous boyfriends, the lack of support for my social outings growing up, the volleyball games I had to have a friend drive me to because my parents were always too busy, the rage I was always at risk of facing if I ever spoke my mind. All while my sister got the opposite. I started to cry, the hardest I ever have. Ethan immediately announced that we were leaving. My dad demanded we stay where we are so we can clear things up, but Ethan ignored him as he pulled me out of my chair and led me away. My mom screamed at me not to leave, and that this guy was trying to isolate me from my family. I yelled back that if anyone had been trying to isolate me, it was her, for my whole life. As we drove back to Ethan's place, my mom sent me several text messages cussing me out, saying one mistake doesn't change the fact that my dad loved, supported, and raised me, and that he would always be my real father. Ethan said he's not my dad, he's an abusive, controlling asshole who was taking his insecurities out on me. I ended up blocking both of my parents' numbers because they were saying some truly awful things to me, both about myself and Ethan. Ethan said he was expecting them to be crazy, but this was far worse than he could have anticipated. He said I need to go into therapy immediately, and that he will pay for anything my insurance doesn't cover. My parents showed up at my apartment twice yesterday to demand I come out and speak to them, but I've been staying at Ethan's all weekend and will likely be here all week. I'm not sure if this is the update y'all wanted. I had countless people enraged at me for being spineless and not standing up to my parents, and while I had planned on doing so, that's not what happened. I don't know what is going to happen with my parents, or where I go from here. But now that the holiday is over, I can spend some time looking for a good therapist. Top comments. So your mom cheated on your dad and you are the affair baby and they treated you poorly because of that? Is that the story, or has my reading comprehension failed me? Maybe you have a great father out there somewhere. 23andMe? Ethan sounds great. The truth shall set you free. My stepdaughter's prank went too far, causing a major conflict in our family. Now, my marriage and relationship with her may never be the same. I know the title sounds bad, but please read and throw away plus fake names. I, 38 million, married Judd, 44 feet, a few years ago, and I acquired a stepdaughter, Abby, 14 feet, as a result. I dated Judd when Abby was 8, met her when she was 9, and married Judd when she was 10. I'd say our relationship is okay. She doesn't act bratty towards me and respects me enough as her mom's husband. However, there is one glaring issue about her, and that is her pranking nature. Abby loves to pull pranks. Some examples are her hiding my car keys with what looked like 100 dubs in a box. I found them quickly because she failed to notice my keys have duct tape on them. Another one is when she hid in the fridge, something I still find very weird, to scare the first person who opened it. Well, last Wednesday, I arrived home and it seemed that I was the only one there. Only my shoes were at the doorstep, and I even called out Judd's and Abby's names with no answer. This is somewhat normal as Judd sometimes works late and Abby stays at school for extracurriculars. So I screwed around with my dog, a German Shepherd and Husky mix for anyone that will ask, for a bit, and then I decided to relieve myself. When I got to the bathroom, I noticed that the window cabinet was open. I thought nothing of it at first and unzipped my pants, but then I saw a shadow behind the shower curtains. I thought the worst and immediately punched the figure behind the curtains. Well, as everyone may have guessed from the title, it was Abby. She was making a prank video and I had not noticed that she propped her phone up on the bathroom cabinet with 2 cups. I'm not gonna lie, I did not hold back. I punched her as hard as I could. Her nose looked broken, and when I realized it, I flipped out, and so did she. After maybe 5 minutes of freaking out, I drove her to urgent care and informed Judd of the situation. Her nose was indeed broken and would need about 6 to 12 weeks of recovery. Abby won't talk to me, and as for Judd, she thinks that my action may have been justified, but also thinks I should have approached with more caution, which she has refused to elaborate on. So AITA? Comments. Comment 1. NTA. Get a copy of the video. If Abby starts bitching to people about how her stepdad broke her nose, you are looking at jail time. Get and keep a copy of the evidence that she startled you while you were peeing. You need to sit Judd and Abby down and have a serious conversation. Filming without consent while someone is in the bathroom is a massive invasion of privacy and illegal in many places. If she did this to another kid, it could be considered child PRN. While you are in the bathroom, you feel vulnerable with having your pants down, genitals out. Those feelings increase the fight-flight part of the brain, and that you react on instinct. Please tell Abby that you love her, and never meant to hurt her. Comment 2. And why would a young girl think pranking her stepfather in the bathroom is ever a good idea? She should at least be talked to about pranking anyone in the bathroom, especially with a video? Comment 3. This is so unfortunate. People get killed for this. She's lucky she's alive. That's the normal reaction. To fight. As messed up this is stuck firmly because this is a life lesson. Play stupid games and win stupid prizes. Fortunately it's all on tape, right? So you're protected. What she did is actually what's unforgivable. Her dumb antics are gonna get someone killed or put in jail. Her mother needs to address this. Not one more prank. Ever. Comment 4. How stupid does a 14-year-old have to be to not know that recording someone in the bathroom without their consent is a very bad idea? And what was the stupid prank? Boo, I scared you, so I'm gonna put your reaction and PP on social media. Hey. NTA, but you might want to get legal advice lawyer before a false and more sinister version gets circulated. Comment 5. As a teacher, I can say that 14-year-olds are indeed very uninformed. Had a 14-year-old once who took 30 minutes to go to the bathroom. When he finally came back, because he was a kid who didn't usually cause trouble, and I was worried, I privately asked, "What the heck took so long?" His response? "I was waiting for people to leave the bathroom." I still didn't get it, so he elaborated. If you use a stall, you're probably trying to shit or do something that you need privacy for, and other people will see your feet under the stall and try to film you by putting their phones over the walls of the stall. I started requiring that students trade their phones for the hall pass after that. Also told the administration, but they didn't do anything. Point is, yes, teenagers are that uninformed that behavior like this doesn't click as being problematic. Update. 12 days later. Well, this blew up big time. Let's address a few things. Abby's pranking nature isn't just situated on me, she has pulled pranks on her friends, the neighbors, and at school. The school has called Judd several times about this as they have resulted in mild vandalism. The refrigerator prank. She was 11 when that happened, not a grown teenager. It was a brand new and very large fridge that my uncle bought and showed it off to everyone. So she climbed in until he opened it again. Judd yelled at her saying that she could have suffocated in there and took her outside to scold her for a few hours. The video itself. The video doesn't show the toilet at all, just the shower curtain. However, the issue still remains that this was a massive invasion of privacy. The video has been deleted and Abby has admitted it was purely her fault. The update. It's been a chaotic week. Judd still refused to elaborate on how the situation should have been handled. I showed the post as a result and she did a 180 turn. She suddenly thought it may be time to stage an intervention and I agreed. We brought some of her friends as well as my cousin's wife Jess. Jess is an officer from another state and Abby seems to respect her. In this intervention we state how we were each affected by her various pranks and how in turn they affected her. Jess also spoke about how much of these pranks border on criminal territory, meaning she could be arrested or face retaliation. It seemed to have gotten to her and Abby cried a bit and promised to do better. When everybody else left, Jess stayed behind and brought to our attention about a disciplinary camp that we could send her to. The program is 6 weeks long and involves group therapy, individual therapy and constructive projects, whatever that means, and is held at a university campus. The program apparently has good reviews. Judd seems dead set in sending her to figure out her core problems. I'm a little hesitant about sending a kid away from home, but I'm the step-parent so I got no say. Edit, update. Okay, I swear Judd must be following my posts because now she's taking back what she said and is now thinking about doing what I and you fellow Redditors suggested in the first place, weekly therapy. So we agreed that I'm gonna find a therapist and I'm gonna front the bill for it since she didn't take this seriously in the first place. Comments. Comment 1. The program apparently has good reviews. Try to get more than just reviews. The troubled teen industry is pretty horrifying. There's a troubled teen subreddit for survivors. It's brutal. Oop. I'm aware, that's why I'm hesitant about this. Comment 2. Oh, thank God, I'm glad you're aware of the troubled teen industry. My heart sank so low when I read that your friend was suggesting it. Maybe it's legit, but I do feel it's a bit of an extreme response. Abby seems like a mostly good kid who just has this one stupid thing that's got stuck in her brain, normal teen stuff. I find it interesting that Judd did a 180 after reading a post, and now seems to be going from one extreme to the other. No real punishment to all punishment. I would think a bit more about that. I realize you're a step-parent and likely have no say in how Abby is parented, but I find it very concerning that your wife seems to be so easily influenced by outsiders. Honestly, if Abby's able to keep to her word to, if not end her pranks entirely, at least tone it down, I'd say you're all in the clear. Maybe suggest to Judd that you keep this program in reserve in case she needs it, and that she has a chance to prove she's learned her lesson first. Comment 3. Sent away seems extreme. Have you looked into this program? Is it held at a religious college? She might just end up abused at some of these types of teen rehabilitation camps and also just exposed to kids that are worse. I realize it might not be your call, but I would suggest try local therapy first way before sending a kid off. Oh. And I agree. Sending a kid away from home will probably just damage them more. But Judd seems intent on dishing out the harshest punishment immediately, thinking that this will nip it at the bud. Or she doesn't want to be seen as an enabler. She changed opinions real fast when I showed her the original post. New update, 7 months later. Well, it's been 7-ish months and there have been a few developments. Let's address some more things before getting there. Up until recently I have been still getting DMs asking why is this brat still in my house, why am I friends with Jess, and why did I name my wife Judd in my posts. I was drinking when I made my first post. I saved a draft and went back to it after a few hours of sobering up, fixing a bunch of grammatical mistakes but clearing some got overlooked and it just stuck. I was planning on calling her Judy. Jess and I are not friends. She is married to my cousin who I do have a good relationship with, as well as their 2 daughters and Jess's daughter. Jess has a serious problem with boundaries. As for why Abba was still living with me, you have to understand, I, her stepfather, broke Abby's, my stepdaughter's, nose. If word got out it would look really bad, I would be seen as an abuser and may have even been arrested. Several comments have pointed out how I should have saved that video for my own safety. I was pretty much going insane at that point and my wife thought nothing of it, thinking I should have just let this go until I showed her my original post. To be honest, I wanted to keep the intervention that we had smaller that didn't involve her friends because I felt they did not need to know about it. I just wanted her grandparents and Jess to show up, but I was convinced otherwise. Update. We decided that we would send Abby to weekly therapy. We were under the agreement that I would find and pay for it, and if it worked my wife would pay me back. It did work. Abby improved by a lot. She has realized how much damage she has done and is working to improve things. She has even begun to do volunteer work as well, which I didn't think she would do. She has apologized profusely, realizing how disgusting her prank was. She has also deleted her TikTok account, claiming that's where she got all the ideas from. We decided we would get her a new smartphone for her birthday 3 months ago for the improvement she's shown. We took away all smart devices as punishment. I don't think I mentioned that before. As for me and my wife, I gave her an ultimatum. Since therapy worked for Abby, it would be time we go to couples therapy or else we separate. We were having problems before this whole incident showed up and now it kinda has to be forced. Past 2 years we've been living more like roommates and her enabling behavior is finally causing things to fall apart. She reluctantly agreed. It ended up being short-lived. She spoke during our sessions how I take things out of proportion and I went too far posting the incident online. She revealed that she was indeed following my posts and that's why she changed her mind about the camp. Our therapist then asked us both if we loved each other at all. I was honest and said yes, but it's becoming difficult. My wife on the other hand said she was in love with the idea of me. I needed a minute if I heard that right, and she went on how I was apparently a catch. I was younger than her, had a stable job and owned a house, and she thought my loyalty was a bonus. I don't why, but I asked her if she cheated on me and she said no. But it doesn't matter, she just revealed that she settled for me. I filed for divorce 2 months ago. We had a prenup, so things are going smoothly other than her erroneously claiming some jewelry is hers, but my lawyer seems to think that it should be finalized within 1 to 2 months. So my Sibex has moved out along with Abby. My dog misses them, she just sits by the door waiting for hours for them to come back. Stibex is not happy about how things have progressed. She has been calling me a spineless bastard who couldn't just tolerate how things are and has been saying to everyone who will listen. But behind closed doors she's been blaming Abby for her divorce, claiming it was her behavior that caused it. I know this because she has called me and texted me semi-regularly. Abby is living with her grandparents because apparently her mother can't deal with her right now. I actually liked my in-laws. They were real good people and they apologized for their daughter's actions and even offered to reimburse me for Abby therapy sessions. They told me that they were going to take care of Abby because it seems her mother has finally lost it. I spoke with Abby and assured her that this wasn't her fault. Chances are we were going to divorce regardless. She then told me that she didn't want me to leave and that I was the closest thing to father she ever had. This surprised me. I never really saw myself as a parental figure for Abby. I only really did the minimal. Outside of that, I just paid for school events, supplies, and would carve out some time for her, but I did leave it up to her if she wanted to spend time with me. I told her that maybe when she turns 18 we can pick up where we left off, but until then I don't think we can see each other. Her mother would definitely try to keep her away from me, and to be honest I need some time away from Abby as well. Things are so quiet at home that it's relaxing. So there you go, I don't even care if my Cbex finds this post. TLDR. Sent Abby to therapy, it worked, but now me and her mother are divorcing and things are just falling apart. Comments. Comment 1. I figured this was where this was headed. Good for you, you deserve better OP, and congrats on being smart enough to get a prenup. OP. You know, when I brought up the prenup she was hesitant and took about 4 months to get her to sign it. Guess that alone should have screamed problems. Comment 2. So your ex-wife didn't get the idea that if she loved you and invested in being more than a roommate, you two would still be married? Like, what's the deal here? To your ex, not you. Advice. Get your dog another dog to be busy. He will forget them at some point. Might also search for a dog daycare somewhere so he can meet other pet friends. OP. Honesty. I think she is just incapable of forming a relationship beyond a superficial one at this point. As for my dog, I did hire a dog walker for her during the day after they moved out. Guess I'll look into doggy daycare too. My broke best friend refused a job at my restaurant, saying being a server is low and not respectable. Original post. This happened just before. My friend is broke, he hasn't worked in over a year, he's running out of savings and has even had to ask his parents to support him. I asked him many times why he doesn't try to get a job that's not in his field. He's got a computer science degree but has never worked in the field a single day in his life since graduating. He's turned down lots of jobs for reasons. They don't pay him enough, they won't give him a higher up position right off the bat, etc. I'm well aware he's deluded in that sense, but he has many other good qualities and that's why I love the guy. So since graduating, the only job he's done is share marketing, something like online investing, in Forex. He said he made about $20 a day and that it was enough for him. He's single, lives in a shared house and doesn't spend much. Whatever makes him happy, right? The thing is, he's totally broke. I don't think he really is making even $20 a day on the shares because he's run out of money. He's stressed out and won't stop complaining about money problems. This is confusing for me, and I think it comes down to his pride not allowing him to get a job that's not fit for his ego. Now, I work as a server in a very nice restaurant and have offered him a job as a server many times. I have a great relationship with my boss, and after telling him my friend's situation, he didn't hesitate to say he wanted to help and would like to offer him a full-time job. My friend has been turning it down for months without really giving much of an explanation. Today he called me saying his parents have cut him off and asked to borrow money from me. I said that as a personal rule I do not lend money to anyone, but that he was welcome to start working tomorrow with me. He again turned down the offer and I got a bit frustrated because I'm offering him a solution to his money problem, but he won't accept it. So we got into a bit of a banter and he finally confessed he thinks being a server is low and doesn't get you people's respect. I told him respect is earned by getting off your ass and doing whatever you have to make ends meet. I asked him if he thinks I'm low and he backpedaled, saying he didn't mean I in particular was low, but the job itself was. He then straight out told me nobody can respect me working as a waiter in my 30s. Wow. TBH. I'm pretty upset. He thinks I am low for working as a server? I got a degree too, but I couldn't find a job in my field, so I had to take the first job I could. I'm not some prissy prick thinking I'm too good to serve others. I take pride in being a waiter and doing a great job. I'm so hurt by his comments. Why is he my friend if he thinks I'm low? I didn't want to say something nasty or get into an argument with him, so I only told him he was being very offensive and I felt like he needed time to think about what he said to me. He replied saying there was nothing to think about, then gave me a list of low jobs like street sweeper, cleaner, etc. and said it's a fact those are low, not respected jobs. I asked him to apologize before this snowballed into a full-blown argument and he said he stood by what he said. I don't want to overreact, but I don't know if we can keep being friends after this. I really don't know what to do. I don't want to badmouth him, but he should examine his life and learn empathy. I'm a very easygoing and forgiving person, but what he said hurt me and was idiotic. The man who refuses to work is calling me low. I don't know what to do. TL.dr friend is broke. I offered him a job in a restaurant, but he turned it down saying it is low and not a well-respected job. Top comments. Comment 1. Honestly, be happy he didn't take the job. Because with that attitude he wouldn't have lasted long and tarnished your rep with it. I don't want to overreact, but I don't know if we can keep being friends after this. Honestly, don't keep him as a friend. Doesn't seem that you get much out of the friendship anyway. Comment 2. Funny. Pompous ass is too good to work as a waiter but isn't above asking to borrow money from a waiter because he's too pathetic to go earn a living to take care of himself. It's easy. Take the job off the table because it's not appreciated or respected by him and it will only end bad for you and your generous boss. Don't lend your friend anything and let him figure out his problems on his own. Simple life lesson coming. Update. AIReddit November 24, 2018, next day. I made this post yesterday asking for advice on how to handle the situation with my friend. Basically, he's very broke and his parents have cut him off. I've been offering him a job in the restaurant I work in for months and he always turned it down. His situation got so bad he came to me yesterday asking to borrow money. I don't lend money to anyone as a rule, but I told him there'll always be a plate of food for him in my house and he was welcome to accept the job offer and start working with me the very next day. Well, long story short, we had a bit of an argument, if you can call it that, and he finally confessed he thinks being a server is low and won't earn him people's respect. In an interesting turn of events, he called me today and said he'd thought it through and had decided he's willing to accept the job only with one condition, as if he was the one doing me the favor, that he's to be made manager right off the bat and that he should move in with me so that I can drive him to work because the bus from his house to my workplace takes 35 minutes and that's over an hour of commuting a day. He then suggested I move my youngest daughter into my elder daughter's room so that there's an empty bedroom for him in my house. So he obviously had given this some thought. I was dumbfounded. The sense of entitlement and the level of pride you gotta have to make those demands is astonishing. I know he's never had a proper job, but he's not stupid. He has to know you can't be made manager if you don't even know the names of their dishes or how to serve a coffee. It's all about his pride. He's got an ego bigger than I thought. He can't be humble enough to accept a waiter job and work things out from there. He needs to be made manager so that it won't hurt his pride as much. I was so out of words I said I don't want to talk and hung up. I can't explain how off-putting that conversation was. I feel repelled by him. I feel disgusted, as if something has changed inside me. I can't have a person like him in my life. What makes a person refuse all help just out of sheer pride? My wife says I've been patient and kind enough to him throughout the years and I should let him figure things out on his own. He really is broke. Before his parents cut him off, they were covering his rent, bills, and he survived on the $20 a day he claimed to be making investing in Forex. I know he barely eats and can't even afford a new pair of shoes, and some other stuff. I know he's got no money, but then why won't he accept the job? He's not shy, has no mental health issues, and has no problem dealing with people. He's refused many other jobs in the past. Even jobs related to his degree, computer science. He's got the wrong idea that he should be given higher up positions right from the start because he's him, and that's what he deserves. That's the reason he hasn't worked a single day since graduating like a decade ago. Anyway, I've gone to do some deep thinking and reevaluate this friendship because I don't like the person he's becoming. His dad is a bus driver and his mother a retired teacher. They are lovely, humble, down-to-earth people. I think they've done the right thing cutting him off. I know they're both struggling financially, so it's not fair for their son to leech off them. His mother even had to go back to work doing some tutoring in order to make some extra money to be able to support my friend. I'd be so ashamed if I made my 70-year-old mother go back to work just so I could be sitting at home dreaming of landing the perfect job while actively dying to get one. Anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry, I'm just so mad. My wife says it's time to cut the cord and distance ourselves from him. I think she might be right. Edit. A yellow star has appeared next to my name. Does this mean I'm the sheriff now?